School Board of Duval County School District is now convened in its regular monthly meeting. To everyone present and to our television viewers, I wish to extend a warm welcome to this meeting of the Duval County School Board. The vision statement of the Duval County School Board states, "Every student is inspired and prepared for success in college or career and life." The mission statement of the Duval County School Board is to provide educational excellence in every school, in every classroom, for every student, every day. The Duval County School Board is here tonight to listen to reports from district staff and to set policy for the district that will improve student achievement. We will also address budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and other business items that require a vote of the board. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. It is not the role of the board to make managerial, operational decisions. The board has policies and procedures in place to assist the superintendent in resolving management and operational issues. If items appear to move quickly, it is because the board meets in an agenda meeting prior to the board meeting for an in-depth review of all agenda items. The committee meeting for the July 7th, 2020 school board meeting will be held on June the 23rd, 2020 at 9:00 a.m. and the public is invited to attend. As a show of courtesy and respect to each other, we ask that all mobile phones be turned off and that no flash photography be used during the meeting. For those wishing to address the board during our public comments portion of the board meeting, please note that we will accept speaker cards until 6:20 p.m. In an effort to mitigate against the spread of COVID-19, we have placed hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes at the podium before you address the board. The CDC currently recommends that facial coverings are worn while in public. Therefore, we recommend that all attendees wear a facial covering during tonight's meeting when they are not separated from other individuals by 6 feet or more, or when they are transitioning to or from the auditorium. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and for your interest in the operation of the Duval County School District. We ask board members, I invite you to stand for a moment of silence and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We now call on Ms. Vicki Pierre. We'll begin our presentations for the evening.
Tonight, our presentations are all about our amazing students. Whether it's in earning scholarships, maintaining perfect attendance, or even saving lives, we're proud to recognize some very impressive accomplishments. Though they're not physically here with us this evening, these students either have received or in the process of receiving certificates or awards commemorating their achievements, and we hope by putting some faces to their names, we can help get them the recognition they deserve. First, we begin with 18 graduating seniors with a combined $36,000 worth of scholarships. It's all made possible by our food service provider, Chartwell's K-12 Dining Services. Duval County Public Schools high school students with plans to attend a college, university, technical, or trade school could apply for a one-time $2,000 scholarship, and so we present this year's winners. They are Leslie Bodie with Ribault High School, having a little bit of technical difficulties, I apologize.
Mackenzie Brewer with Douglas Anderson School of the Arts, Jordan Brown with Paxton School for Advanced Studies, Michaela Brown with Mandarin High School, Bria Clark with Paxton School for Advanced Studies, Leah Green with Rains High School, Kayla Hall with First Coast High School, Mylan Jones with Robert E. Lee High School, Michael Lee with Darnell Cookman School of the Medical Arts, Jayla Lesesny with Westside High School, Andrew Lopez with Stanton College Preparatory School, Taylor Moore with Baldwin Middle Senior High School, Reese Register with Sandalwood High School, Paris Richardson with Ribault High School, Karim Riley with Frank H. Peterson Academies of Technology, Ayanalua Saka with Stanton College Preparatory School, Chase Verta Steele with Stanton College Preparatory School, and Michaela Walker with Douglas Anderson School of the Arts. Now, these students had to submit an application, transcript, proof of their post-secondary plans, as well as write and research an essay to be eligible. And this goes back to Chartwell's and their desire to give back to the students they serve daily. So please join us in congratulating these recipients, as well as thanking Chartwell's for this opportunity. Most of us cannot use the word perfect to describe ourselves, but for 3 of our recent graduates, they've earned it. That's because they each maintained perfect attendance throughout their entire academic career, never missing a day of school from kindergarten through the 12th grade. We're recognizing each of them this evening, beginning with Jesse Bailey of Stanton College Preparatory. Jesse tells us he decided pretty early on that he wanted to achieve perfect attendance, and he had encouragement from his family. As a result, he made a lot of sacrifices, including passing up on some school trips so he wouldn't miss a day of class. He says he truly enjoys learning and believes going to school helps him as a person and as a student. He'll be attending the University of Central Florida to pursue a Bachelor of Science in Microbiology as well as in nursing, and he wants to get a doctoral degree as a certified registered nurse anesthetist. Next, we have Timothy Sinclair, also of Stanton. He tells us perfect attendance goes back to strong family values centered around education, and he also felt it was just important to be in school every day and learn something new, even on the days he didn't feel like going to school. By the way, he says his dad also had perfect attendance, and his younger sister is also on her way. He plans to go to the University of Florida with hopes of becoming a civil rights attorney and eventually a federal judge. Finally, we have Vijay Thomas of Paxton School for Advanced Studies. She says perfect attendance also runs in her family. Her mother earned it, and so she was a big motivator and supporter. She felt it wasn't too hard to go to school each day because she liked seeing her peers and teachers and felt it would be harder to make up lost time. She plans on attending the University of North Florida to study criminal justice and criminology and wants to become a forensic lab technician. All of these students were extremely involved in their respective schools with long lists of extracurricular activities and accomplishments, and we think it's safe to say that given their commitment these last 13 years, they'll do just fine. So please help us congratulate Jesse Bailey, Timothy Sinclair, and Vijay Thomas. Finally, he's a student that some are referring to as a saint and a hero, and we believe that once you hear his story, you'll agree. For our last presentation, we recognize Aaron Hill, a Sandalwood High School saint whose heroic actions saved many lives. It all began on May 18th. He says he was up late working on homework when he heard loud noises. He looked out the window and saw a fire blazing in his townhome community. He says that without even thinking about the flames, he put on his shoes, called 911, and began knocking on his neighbors' doors to make sure everyone got out, and many of those neighbors were asleep and didn't realize there was a fire. Because of his efforts, everyone got out safely. And speaking about his actions, he says, quote, "My first priority was getting people out of the building. You can replace buildings, but you can't replace people." He also tells us, "I don't see myself as a hero. I was just doing what any sane person would do." And just to tell you a little bit more about Aaron, he is a rising senior at Sandalwood and is extremely involved, including being chorus president, student director, and next year he'll be drum major of the marching band. Because of his actions, he was sent a superintendent's coin of excellence by Dr. Green. So please help us congratulate Aaron Hill, Sandalwood High School senior, for his courageous actions in saving the lives of others. And that concludes this evening's presentations.
All right, thank you very much. And with 130,000 students and only 3 had perfect attendance, that's amazing. That really is. Thank you. Pursuant to Board Policy 2.26, board members may attend board meetings and participate and vote through the use of interactive video and/or telephone systems. That the Duval County School Board approved the participation of board members Lori Hershey and Darrell Willie via interactive video and/or telephone system. The motion. Moved by board member Smith Juarez, second by Vice Chair Anderson. I call for your vote.
This isn't coming. I don't know. I guess I've got it now.
Board member and Vice Chair Anderson is having a problem. Can you call on her for a hand vote?
Vice Chair Anderson?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Do we need to vote again?
I'm gonna resubmit the vote. Can you vote again?
Yes.
Board member Anderson, Vice Chair Anderson, yes. Okay.
You're still yes.
By your action, you've approved adding board members Willie Hershey and Darrell Willie to the meeting. We'll need a few minutes to get them on the phone.
Yes. And I think that's what we talked about. You want to talk with other teams. It's not a job talk, so I get to maybe with some fresh.
Got the wrong number. Okay, thank you. Board member Hershey, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Board member Willie, are you present?
If we go through the job, okay?
Yes, I'm here as well.
You have to know, you get your mango, how much you're going to get out of it.
We got a lot of feedback. I don't know what's called.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Okay. That the Duval County School Board approve the June 16, 2020 agenda as submitted on June the 9th, 2020 with the following changes. Academic Services, Agreement with Educational Management Consultant Services, EMCS, attachments added. I ask for a motion. Moved by Vice Chair Anderson, second by Board Member Grimes. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, I call for your vote. Board Member Hershey,
Yes.
Board Member Willie?
Yes.
Oh, Vice Chair Anderson.
Yes.
Okay. Take my seat. By action, that item passes 7-0. Thank you. Chairperson's report. I've asked Vice Chair Anderson to chair the meeting while I read my report. Most of us are aware of the changes happening and concerns being expressed across the country, not just in Jacksonville, but all over this country. And I've had conversations with a number of individuals, spoken several times with Ben Frazier with Northside Coalition and other groups who have advocated for months, if not years, that we look at or examine the changing the names of schools named for Confederate soldiers. What I'm asking for tonight is not a vote to change anything. It's a vote to start the process based on school board policy of changing or looking at the possibility of changing the names of 6 schools named for Confederate soldiers. The values of the era reflected in these names and the values of the era in which many schools receive these names are values entirely contradictory to the values children should experience in a 21st century education. And as of Tuesday of last week, we now know those values are inconsistent with the values of our city. As the city of Jacksonville now works to remove monuments to the Confederacy from our public spaces, we should do our part. Under our school board policy, I have the authority to initiate changing the names of these schools by making a recommendation to the board. As I look across our country and our community, I can come to no other conclusion. The time is now. Friday is Juneteenth, the day we celebrate as the day all slaves in America finally received their freedom. More than 150 years later, it's time to remove another barrier to true freedom. These schools' names stand as troubling monuments to African Americans and to all who seek to live in a civil society in which we are truly one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all. It is not time to forget history. It's not time to erase history, but it is time to finally leave the history where it belongs, in the past.
I can't believe it.
We changed the school in the past, Nathan Bedford Forest.
And calling to rename all of these schools.
That was a giant step for our community. I think this would be another giant step for our community. So therefore, I move that the Duval County School Board accept the written request of Chairperson Warren A. Jones received at the June 16, 2020 regular board meeting to initiate the renaming of schools, and that the request for renaming the following schools be referred to Superintendent Green pursuant to Board Policy 8.59, Section 3B. Joseph Finnegan Elementary School, Stonewall Jackson Elementary School, Jefferson Davis Middle School, Kirby Smith Middle School, Jeb Stewart Middle School, and Robert E. Lee High School.
Thank you, Chair Jones. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Board Member Smith Juarez. We'll have discussion. Before we move into discussion, I would ask Ms. Chastain please to review the policy and procedure. It's been provided to each of the board members, and board members that are with us by telephone, you should have received a copy of this policy in your email as well, right at the beginning of the meeting from Ms. Chastain for your review. Ms. Chastain?
Good evening. Through the Vice Chairman to the board members and guests, good evening. Board Policy 8.59 is titled Naming or Renaming Schools, and Roman numeral 3 of that policy describes the process to rename an existing school, which is applicable to this matter. It's in 3 parts, A, B, and C. Part A sets forth who can initiate the request, and pursuant to subsection A, any school board member, including Chairman Jones, can submit a written request. And he's done so tonight during a regular meeting. Section B is the next step, and that is the substance of Chairman Jones's motion on the floor right now. And what it says is, upon receipt of the written request described in subsection 3A above, the school board shall decide by a majority vote of the board whether to accept the written request and refer the matter to the superintendent for further review. If the school board accepts the written request, then the superintendent shall establish protocols for renaming the school, which includes soliciting community input from the following. Number 1, the SAC of the school, which is the School Advisory Council. Number 2, the PTA of the school. Number 3, students of the school. Number 4, community members within the school's attendance zone. Number 5, members of the school's faculty and staff. And number 6, alumni of the school. So what's before you tonight is whether to accept Chairman Jones' written request, to accept the request and refer the matter to the superintendent to implement this step in Part B of the policy. And then finally, in Part C, after the superintendent goes through that process, the superintendent brings a recommendation to the board.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I just thought it was important to frame the conversation and discussion in terms of the policy before us. So I'll open the floor. Any discussion? Board Member Joyce?
The proposal before us tonight first came to my attention during a conversation with Dr. Green last week. Since that time, I've spent a lot of time in prayer. I've prayed and I've pondered. As I said to Dr. Green, what Jacksonville really needs is a revival. The whole country. The Bible says God does not see as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. Again, a change in the desperately wicked hearts of men is what is needed. But that is a work done by the Holy Spirit. The work of this board is education, and it is undeniable that there is an achievement gap with our black students and our white students. Bridging that gap with evidence-based changes to our teaching, curriculum, and behavioral supports is how we can make a difference that matters. The amount of time it takes our students to get the academic and behavioral supports needed at the elementary level is frustrating for so many of our teachers and parents. That is just the starting point. There are many other tangible ways that we can identify and focus our resources to make a difference. Education is power, and it is the tool that we have at our disposal that will allow our black students to have the opportunity to prosper. That is the hard work I want us to join hands and do together. My concern with a hurried and reactive response is that by moving quickly to accomplish a surface change on the outside of schools, one that I fear will not make will not move the needle in closing the achievement gap between black students and white students, we run the risk of sending the message that we did something, without delivering anything of substance to change what happens inside of schools. We should also acknowledge and give some thought to unintended consequences that may result from a name change. Like happened when the name of Forest High School was changed, A name change runs the very real risk of hurting students by cutting off alumni support groups who disengage from schools that they no longer have a connection with. Second, based on the cost associated with changing the name of Forest, we can expect the suggested name changes to cost in the neighborhood of a few $1,000,000. The proponents of this fall's sales tax referendum should expect voters to wonder how necessary a tax increase is if we are so quickly able to decide that we can afford to spend a few $1,000,000 to put a Band-Aid on a wide open wound. Having said all that, the board has a process for considering proposed name changes, and I am ready and willing to participate and certainly support starting a conversation. It is our duty to hear and respond to our constituents, and if this proposal will allow the people who live in the communities where these schools are located to have a voice in this board's decision, I am in favor of hearing from all of those voices. Therefore, I will vote in favor of Chairman Jones's proposal.
Thank you, Board Member Joyce. Board Member Smith Juarez?
Thank you. I agree that this is a good conversation to have, and that it is a conversation that is due. It is not recent that this has been raised, and it is time to talk about it. So I appreciate Board Member Jones bringing it forward. I agree that tonight's vote, as legal has stated, will initiate a process of deep community engagement, a process that will ultimately result in a recommendation from the superintendent, and that the board will have much conversation, I would imagine, along the pathway and when that recommendation comes forward. Public squares do telegraph the values of a community, and our public schools telegraph the values of our district and of our community. And so it's important that our values are reflected in all that we do for students and for our community, in budgets, in curriculum, in employment, in communications, in services, and in how we name our buildings. So again, this is a good conversation to have. Somewhere here in front of me, I have our values as stated in board policy 1.10. These were last updated in 2018, and they read, our core values, there are 4. Knowledge, we foster lifelong learning in children and adults to be prepared to participate in the global economy. We foster responsibility. We foster learning that leads to independence by upholding individual and collective commitments to create a community of learners. Trust. We foster positive relationships based on mutual respect, transparency, honesty, and the consistent demonstration of actions. Compassion. We foster an environment of equity and empathy that respects differences and values diversity. We have worked very hard as a board, long before 2018, to have those tough conversations about equity, to make sure that equity is reflected in our policies, to the degree that when I spoke with the superintendent a couple of weeks ago to inquire and think through were there policy changes that we needed to examine, she said, we've been through that as staff and you all have really done that work. Your policies reflect equity, the value that we know that we have, along with compassion. So again, I think this is a good conversation to have. I do have some questions to the chair. Could you clarify why you are suggesting these 6 school names be examined particularly, and why this subset of 6 names?
Chair Jones.
Thank you, Vice Chair Anderson. Yes, the 6 schools were chosen because we could document they were named after Confederate soldiers. And when you look at the timing of the naming of the schools, I've noted that 2 of the schools, Kirby Smith and Robert E. Lee, were named right after Reconstruction in the 1920s. The other 4 schools were named after the Brown versus Board of Education, 1954. So the timing is significant. The fact that Black Americans were not allowed in the 20s to even vote in many cases, and in the 1950s there were no Black elected officials anywhere in Duval County. So to disenfranchise a group and then to name schools after those who fought for the Confederacy, I think is certainly not fair.
No, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. And I do think that the history is important to the conversation, both our collective American history and the history of our school district. I know that it was much of the conversation as we deliberated over the name of Westside High School, and I look forward to it being part of the conversation as we move through the process with these 6 schools. I also, along those lines, would encourage us to have a conversation if we are speaking about the reflection of the values of our district in the naming of our schools. We have a school that was named for a president who was responsible for the Indian Removal Act and moved more than 60,000, but an estimated 60,000 of those indigenous people died on the Trail of Tears as they were being forcibly moved west. We have a school that is named for a French colonizer who came to Fort Caroline, which he named, and seized land from the Timucuans. In his leadership in so doing, although he left and returned to England, he left a leadership demonstration and mandate that led to ongoing conflict with the indigenous peoples. I can't pretend to know, and maybe I should as a school board member, but pretend to know the exact histories and legacies of all of our schools that are named for individuals, and all of the reflections of those individuals in our values. But I would encourage us, if we're going to have this conversation, that we have it comprehensively, and that we think through the names of Andrew Jackson, of Jean Roubaud, of others that may not immediately come to my attention, and that we think through how do we reflect our values in how we label our school sites. So I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate that it will initiate a process that will engage the communities that have already been stated. I'll state them again. The SAC of the school, the PTA of the school, at least 75% of the school's current students, alumni of the school, the minimum number of which is at least 75% of the school's current student body population, and community members within the school's attendance zone. And one of those, we're going to have to decide how we will do that, given that it doesn't have an attendance zone. It is a dedicated magnet school. And so I think there is much conversation that we need to have about how to do this thoughtfully and how to do it well. And so as I am supportive of the initiation of this policy this evening, I think there is conversation that we should have as a board about this. And that I would like to see us give direction to the superintendent in this vote this evening to bring back a process which the policy asks for, that this is an initiation, that the superintendent move through the process and bring a plan to the board. And I would highly support a plan that does this engagement when we can do it earnestly, when we have our students in our schools, when we're able to really deeply and transparently engage these groups. The SACs of schools generally disband over the summer and reorganize in the fall. The PTAs of schools, we have asked extraordinary things from our parents this spring, and from our students and from our staff. And so I would hope that we could give direction to the superintendent to initiate a plan that will begin this process after we have returned to school in the fall, the late summer, whatever it may be now. We're starting school early. But although I know there are still many decisions to be made, but schools will need some time to get open. Principals are preparing not just their typical master schedules and all of the work that they do over the summer to have schools ready for students, but there is not just one, but many additional layers to reopening this year that we're already asking of our administrators and of our staff over the summer. So I would think that it would be appropriate to begin this process in the fall. And in the meantime, to be doing some research and understanding the history with which the 5 Confederate generals and the president of the Confederacy, how those schools came to be named, what is the history behind them, what is the cost to the renaming, and what is the opportunity cost of the dollars that could be proposed to be spent on renaming. What is the implementation timeline? And how can we do this in a way that is thoughtful about our values comprehensively for our school district? So I am supportive of the motion, but do look forward to answering a number of comprehensive questions that I think are important to the way that this board does our work and the way that this board leads education in the community. Thank you to the chair and to the vice chair.
Thank you, Board Member Smith-Juarez. I believe we may have lost our board members on the phone. So, do we need to connect them for comment or for discussion?
Yes, we are working on getting them back into a new conference line because we had a third party interfering on the line they were on.
Any discussion, Ms. Grimes?
Yes. I have been so sad of where we are, not just in our country, but in the world. Just the things that we have to do over and over and over. I sat at this table in 1932, something like that. No, not, I wasn't born then, right? No, but the consolidation that was very, very difficult for us. And quite frankly, we haven't done anything, maybe little things, but we have not done what we should have done. I just, that talking about getting people together and, how long is this going to take? It's our duty to make sure that our schools are well kept, that our children are getting the best that they can have. It's, to me, and I'm certainly do want to go through the process, and I think with how it fell out with Forrest, that we can do this well, and we all need to be doing this well. This isn't but I think to even think that we wouldn't do something, to me, makes it, as I said, it makes me very, very sad. And I certainly want to go ahead and my vote as being yeah.
Thank you, Board Member Grimes. I think we're still waiting. While we're waiting to make sure that Board Member Hershey and Board Member Willie have an opportunity to contribute to the discussion, I did ask the superintendent for some data related to when these schools were named and their demographic makeup. And so while I'm waiting, I'll just share that information. Of the 6 schools that Board Member Jones is proposing we consider renaming, he's mentioned that 2 were built in the 1920s. The other 4 were built 1958, or excuse me, were named and built 1958 or later. And 5 of the 6 have 75% or more, up to 90% minority students in their buildings. I will couch that in the context of the Brown versus Board of Education decision, which was concluded in 1954. And I think that that's just, when we're looking at the timeline of the way that our schools, the choices that were made around naming our schools and the children that sit in those buildings, I think it's important to keep that in mind. So I won't go too far into that, and I will hope that we are able to get Board Member Hershey and Board Member Willie involved in the discussion.
Madam Chair, Vice Chair.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Hershey had to leave for, I don't know if that's why she had another engagement, so I don't know if she left because of that or whether because of disconnection.
Well, I hear some footsteps. While we were waiting, did you have any follow-up?
Yes,
Chair Jones?
just for the record, not officially, not for that record, but I did want to add that I chose this process because it's not a hurried process. Unlike what happened to the Confederate monument at Hemming Park, which was taken down at the night, we will have an extensive discussion, community involvement before the superintendent can even make a recommendation. So it's not a hurried process at all. And secondly, the cost to rename Nathan Bedford Forrest Westside High was almost $200,000, $197,000. 75% of that cost was to outfit the uniforms. It wouldn't cost as much for a middle school because they don't have as many teams, and it wouldn't cost as much for elementary because they have no teams. So there is a cost involved, and we have spoken with organizations that are willing to assist in that cost once the district has made that decision.
Chair Jones, I'm gonna I think Board Member Hershey is still on the line, but we do know she has another engagement. So if she wants to join the discussion, I'd like to turn it over to Board Member Hershey. Are you with us?
Yes, I am. Is Chairman Jones still talking?
I think we are okay for you to go ahead with your discussion.
Okay. That's fine. I'm just watching online and I was seeing I was still talking, so I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, there might be a time delay.
Oh, okay. All right. So what I wanted to say is that I appreciate the conversation And I think that if this was an easy decision, as Board Member Grimes had indicated, the decision would have already been made. But this is a difficult conversation, and it's for a time such as this. I think it's really important to underscore the fact that this is the initiation of a conversation, and that board policy is methodical and meticulous in the process, and this is not something that will be done overnight, and there will be plenty of opportunity for stakeholder input as we move forward in making the right decision.
Thank you, Board Member Hershey. I think we are going to get, do we have Board Member Willie on the line also? Okay. We're going to switch over to Board Member Willie as soon as we get him on the line. Was there anything else you were adding? I interrupted you. I will say that while we are getting him on the line, I appreciate the dialogue of this board and the courage of this board, and I'm proud to be a part of it. Thank you all for being patient.
What else were they going to do?
I mean, we've got you held here.
Leave.
Board Member Willie, are you on the line?
I am.
It is your turn for discussion, sir, if you'd like to contribute.
No, perfect. I appreciate the comments and the sentiments from my colleagues that sit on this board, and I appreciate the opportunity to have this moment to speak. I think we're in a moment. There have been many folks who have sat in the chairs that we all sit in that made decisions that affect hundreds and thousands of students every single year. And I think now that the light is shining very bright on this moment, we have an opportunity. And I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion and to right wrong, because it's wrong to name a school after somebody who was a Confederate general who owned slaves and have black kids.
No applause,
go
please.
to that school. There is something about that is wrong, and we talk about safety a lot when it comes to our kids and our students. Is it safe? Is that safe? Is that mentally safe to think about that? And now more than ever, we're going to have kids who now understand it. Maybe they didn't before, but now the light is shining bright on it. The folks are going to know who those people are that their school is named after. So that does something to someone. That does something to our kids. So we have a moment to really empower our kids and our communities to do something. And I appreciate the opportunity, because this is a process. And I hope that we'll choose the right time to sort of go about this process, because it is empowering to have students be able to be a part of naming the entity in which they go to school is big. So I want the community to know, and I think everybody has said it, that we care about our students, and we care about their safety, their well-being. We care about this community, and that's the reason we're making these decisions. So I stand in favor and in support of the chairman in moving forward. I know that we don't have all the answers, but this will be a process, and I want people to know that this will be a process when it comes to it, because we want community input. We want insight. We want folks to be involved, and that's the difference, is we want that to happen. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and appreciate everyone dealing with the technical difficulties.
Thank you, Board Member Willie. If there's no further discussion, we have a motion and a second. I call for your vote.
Keep them rolling, because I
We're just making sure that we have both board members on the line for voting. Board Member Willie, what's your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm still not working. My vote is yes. Board-
You have to switch on.
Board Member Hershey, what is your vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Do I just say yes?
By your actions, you have approved this item 7-0. I will turn the gavel back over to the chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Anderson, and thank the board for that unanimous vote. And I think the community will reward us with their participation in this process going forward. So I thank you. Superintendent's report, Dr. Green.
Thank you, Chairman Jones. Wait for my PowerPoint to come forward. My report tonight deals with the very topic that the board contemplated and voted on, as well as something School Board Joyce stated about our students, that this issue or event or time that we are facing in our history is more than just school names. It has to be a comprehensive review about what we're doing in our schools. And my PowerPoint is going to touch on both topics. It's kind of interesting that Ms. Smith-Flores said she wanted to know the procedure. Well, actually in my PowerPoint, I touch on that procedure of if we were to move forward with implementing policy 8.59. I will tell you, I think, is someone going to push it for me? Because thank you. As Ms. Chastain shared, she went through the steps of policy 8.59, so I will not go over those steps. But the next step, now that the board has voted, is for the superintendent to implement the procedures of moving forward with, and here's one part of the policy I'm not sure people know, it is either move forward with a name change or keep the school name as is. So this procedure is very inclusive of everyone who pretty much touches the school. And so it starts with stakeholder engagement with the School Advisory Council, PTAs, PTSAs, students, faculty, staff, alumni, and community members are invited to engage in the process. There is a very clear process to verify eligibility to participate. It requires that our resources spend an inordinate amount of time to ensure that we have maps of school location and addresses within those school district boundaries. We will have a unique challenge with Kirby Smith because it does not have a school attendance boundary, but the team that is working that will work through this will develop procedures for that specific school. This process is not just at the school level. Every one of the schools will have a support team from the district, which will include strategic planning, policy and compliance, accountability and assessment, human resources, the Office of School Improvement, and facilities and communication. That team will work with each school. They will work with the principal and the school advisory council on the procedures, the documents that will be utilized, everything from the beginning to the end. That team will work with each school. Putting it to a vote, they will have balloting procedures. Those procedures may be different for students versus alumni or community members that live within that school district attendance boundary. The results are calculated and shared with the leadership staff. And then once that has been done, then it comes back to the board for a vote. The superintendent offers the board a proposed new name or no change to the school's existing name. The school board either accepts, rejects, or requests another name be proposed. Now, this is very simplified in stating the procedures. I assure you there are many more steps that will be required. And I think the August board meeting that we should, I think Ms. Chastain will be back on our normal. So the August board meeting, either in a board meeting or a workshop, I will have staff sort of present the procedures and go through the entire process if that is the desire of the board. But for tonight, I just wanted to kind of just give the 50,000-foot view of what are the procedures that would be required. We've been very fortunate to have the expertise of Ms. Chastain and our policy and compliance department that went through the name change for Westside High School. So we are heavily relying on those procedures that were implemented, and we are working very hard to make sure that we're following those procedures very closely. So as I stated, this is not all about just changing the names of our schools. This is about creating a comprehensive plan that ensures that the policies, and as Ms. Smith-Juarez said, staff has gone through the policies. We have very strong policies for equity and inclusion. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time getting somebody. Turn the next slide. So when we look at board policies, they're very strong. But as I share with many people, policies are there to set, these are the guidelines, these are the rules. And it's my job to ensure as a superintendent and school district that those policies are implemented and that we are following the policies. So part of that role is ensuring that the things that the board put in the policy, that we have checks and balances to ensure that those things are happening. So we have equity liaisons at every single school. It is designated individuals that are there to provide immediate support to students and schools regarding equity matters. Student clubs, numerous special interest student clubs such as GSA, religion and cultural clubs to support and engage students. Our student enrollment has been increasing every year. We do a report to the board and share with the board that shows that we are getting more and more students engaged in student clubs. Law enforcement training. We constantly are reviewing our de-escalation strategies. That training happens every year. Director Edwards just did a training with new hires 2 weeks ago to ensure interactions with students are appropriate. We are also building future trainings for implicit and explicit bias training for our law enforcement department. Curriculum alignment. This board has approved for the last 2 years purchase of multicultural books for our media centers. We today in grades K through 5 have purchased over 3,000 books that either their author is African American or Hispanic, or the main characters are African American, Hispanic, Indian, the cultures that represent our district. We have made the move to ensure that they're going to see books where they can see themselves. Professional development. We already have training for onboarding and annual pre-planning, training in ethical and equity-based practices through certified instructors. We either have training for teachers, administrators, or our non-certificated PD cohorts and learning sessions. Restorative justice. Last year, this board approved a systematic restorative justice strategy. So students, when they are engaged in activity that's not positive and there's consequences required at a certain level, the school must implement restorative justice practices so that we are giving students this opportunity to engage in ways to deal with conflict, to mitigate against implicit and explicit bias. And then we have strong partnerships with our partner agency support, ongoing relationships with such as United Way, Jasmine, and Equity Florida. We'll continue to build those partnerships. We are entering into a new partnership with JPEF. They just received a $10,000 grant, and they are paying for one of our employees to be trained in implicit and explicit bias training so that we can start offering more training to more individuals. Though we've made great strides, and I fully agree the board has done its job in implementing policies that help the school district move forward, but we still have a lot of work to do. We still have great disparities that exist between our African American students and all other ethnicities and races of our school district. African American students make up 44% of our student enrollment, yet they make up 75% of all out-of-school suspensions. That's a problem. That's a disparity. That's one example that we have to do better. That's one example that says, even though we have all the policies, the code of conduct, we have the strategies in place, it has to go beyond compliance. Compliance means we follow the policies. Or if you are not following the policy, we have a sort of checks and balances. Many times we're coming after the fact. We're coming after someone has not followed policy or someone has not followed a particular rule or guideline. We now have to get to commitment. We have to move down to the student level. Students are not interested in our policies. They're interested in, how do you feel about me? They're interested, do you think I'm valued? Do you think I'm worthy of your time? They're interested in finding out, why won't anyone listen to me? So we have to do all the things that I've just talked about on the previous slides. But now we also have to figure out, how can we reach into the classroom? How can we reach down at the school level and support not only our students, but also support our faculties and staffs at our schools? So one of the things that we are going to be bringing to the board is recommending an increase in staff, a director and 2 specialists to focus on school and student support. Equity is more than just ensuring, did we treat everyone in a fair manner? Equity is about ensuring that it doesn't matter what zip code that you come from. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter your gender or gender identity. What matters is that I value you as a person. I'm going to provide the highest quality education to you, and I'm going to find ways to engage you and reach you. And we have that same issue with our families. It isn't just the students, it's their families, and how are we going to bring our school district together to ensure that we are serving all students. We know that we need to expand professional development for employees. I just talked about JPEF. They are engaging in the grant to help us pay for one of our staff members to be trained in the training called implicit and implicit and explicit bias. Expand training on social emotional learning. We are coming at the beginning of a new school year in the midst of a pandemic and all that's going on in our country. And we have no idea what our students are experiencing. We have no idea what they are engaged in during the summer, and we've not seen them personally since spring break. So we know that we have a lot of work to do when they come back. We know that we're going to have to also work with our staff. They've not been in school since spring break. It is a huge transition to work from your couch to now coming back to brick and mortar into a classroom. So we will feel it on both ends of the candlestick. We will need to be there to support our students, and we will need to be there to support our faculties and staff. And increase engagement with parents and community partners. We are taking that training that JPETH is paying for, and we are going to also develop it into Parent Academy training. Again, we have to look at this through a comprehensive lens. It isn't just one thing that whether the board does it or we're doing it at the school level is going to heal our community. And for us, it's about healing our school district and ensuring for our students that all of them are valued and they're all important, and that we're going to do what we need to do as a school district to support them and be successful. And so the slide that I shared about the out-of-school suspension is something that we now, unfortunately, are recognized at the state level for over-identification of African-American males out-of-school suspension, with the caveat that the majority of these African-American males are also students with disabilities. And part of our requirement as a school district is to write a plan on how we're going to address that issue. So that will fold into this process of what we are viewing as a way that we're going to ensure that every student, whether they are Hispanic, African American, all students, no matter their ethnicity, no matter their gender, that they can and will be successful as a student of Duval County Public Schools. So that's the end of my report. I will email the board again, sort of a recommended timeline that I will come back and share with the board the procedures for what the board voted on tonight for the name changes for the 6 schools, and give the board our recommended timeline on how the schools should move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Green. Next, we move into public comment. We are now on the public comment portion of our agenda. Those wishing to address the board must fill out a blue speaker's card. The school board welcomes your comments on matters that are before the board for consideration. It is not the board's intent to respond this evening, but to use the input in our deliberations. To give everyone appropriate respect and courtesy, we ask the audience to refrain from audible comments or applause. When you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. When the green light is in front of me starts blinking, you will have a minute remaining. When the light turns yellow, you will have 30 seconds remaining. When it turns red and the buzzer sounds, your time will be up. If your concerns exceed that time, you may present written comments to the board. You are asked to refrain from references to specific individuals or to follow expectations of civil discourse. In an effort to mitigate against the spread of COVID-19, we have placed hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes at the podium. We ask that each speaker wipe down the microphone and podium before they address the board. The CDC currently recommends that facial coverings are worn while in public. Therefore, we recommend that all attendees wear a facial covering during tonight's meeting when they are not separated from other individuals by 6 feet or more, or when they are transitioning to or from the auditorium. Please remember that speaker cards were only accepted up until 6:20 p.m. Thank you for taking your time to address the board. Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman Jones. We have 30 speaker cards tonight. The first speaker is Darlene Miller, followed by Denise Scott.
Good evening. My name is Darlene Miller. I come to you tonight on behalf of a special needs parents group that I belong to, having a special needs child myself. Parents right now, and I realize we are in unknown territory and things that we had never foreseen could happen. But these parents are feeling very neglected right now, and I don't even know how to put their emotions actually into words. Duval homeroom was a great thing for some of our children.
This not happening now. Our society, our kids, the society we live in depends on who we look up to. Now, the schools I attended were named after cities, astronauts, areas, beautiful things, people to look up to. I don't think that monuments, public schools, need to represent the history of Confederacy, but what we aspire to be in a society. The history can be learned in the history books, but the statues we literally look up to downtown, the school placards that we look up to and learn about, those should represent who we want to be. We start now with these schools, this Confederacy. We continue on, make more arguments for sensitivity and how we can do better. We don't stop having this argument. We don't stop having this discussion. We do now, we continue on, and we never forget that the students and the life and society they live in should have schools, monuments, and an educational overall system that supports equality, who we want to be, who we are as Americans. These things were erected. Educators and the educated here know that these things were erected under white supremacist values, the same way as the Confederacy went to war for those same values. This needs to stop now, be changed now, and then we'll reach and do more, and we won't forget it.
Thank you. Christy Forte, followed by Alex Horton.
Christy Fort.
Fort.
I believe it would be in the best interest of the students of Duval County to change the names of schools honoring Confederate leaders. I believe these names should be changed because it is not generally considered sound judgment to honor one's enemies, nor does honoring these men show respect for the many, many 19th century Southern Americans who did not condone or support their actions against our country. I describe the Confederate leaders as enemies of the United States because that is what they were considered to be and claimed to be themselves. They committed treason by both firing on Fort Sumter and then engaging in a full-blown war after that. They formed a counter-government, they coined money, and they traveled overseas to vehemently request help from foreign powers in their objective to defeat the United States of America. This type of behavior from other enemies of America is not honored in American schools. One does not find a Hirohito High or an Osama bin Laden middle school in even one of the 50 states, for example. Secondly, honoring these American enemies ignores the many Southern Americans, both black and white, who did not agree with these men and who in fact actively fought, risking and losing their lives against their treasonous actions. There are today many hundreds of scholars combing through, reading, and publishing hundreds of stories to validate my claim. Just one example is in the words of North Carolina's Civil War governor, Zebulon Vance. In 1864, Vance declared, "The great popular heart is not now and never has been in this war. It was a revolution of the politicians and not the people." All right. I may not get to my end. Supporters of using Confederate names and keeping Confederate monuments typically say these things should stay to honor our history. But this is neither in keeping with how enemies of America are usually treated, nor is it inclusive of all or even the majority of the people who lived through that history. Duval County should take the important and truthful step of renaming each and every school that is named after a former traitor to our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alex Horton, followed by Michael Fort.
Hello. My name is Alex Horton. I want to thank you guys for having us. This is a really important thing. I think this goes and it speaks to our values as a society, what we hold important, because the people we put out there, the people we put on the top of our schools, and the people we put on those statues are representative of us. Do we want to be represented by people who did not respect human dignity? And this is the big thing I've heard about tonight in this conference, about embrace of restorative justice and embrace of human dignity. How does that embrace our children's human dignity when we have people up there who are guilty of treason from this country? They left here, fired upon us, killed other Americans, and not just that. Think about this. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Any of you have veterans, family members in here? These folks in the Confederacy fought against our country. They are treasonous. They are traitors. They should not be looked at that way. It's terrible. I got a couple more things, and really, our kids are watching. What do we do? How do we tell our kids that we had an opportunity to take these down, and we decided it cost a little too much? Does that really make sense? Like, would we do that with anything else? Like, if there was somebody who came into our yard, stole something every single day, and then my kid's like, "Hey, why don't you put up a security system?" It costs too much. It's wrong. We got to fix this. It is wrong. It's not right, and it's wrong. And I appreciate you guys, and sorry for my passion. I'm just very, very upset, and I think we have a very good opportunity to make a difference and to change this city, this state, in this country, and the world right now. This is a unique opportunity that will come once. Thank you all.
Thank you. Michael Fort, followed by Tom McGuire.
My name is Michael Fort. I'm a pastor, and I can't stand the thought of a child walking into a school that has a racist name on it. Whether it's perceived that way to you or not doesn't matter to me. It's how it's perceived to the kid that walks in the door. So for you to stand there and say money, give me a break. There are children walking through the doors of schools in our district every day that are looking at racist names that bring up names of fear to their parents, to people in their community, to their grandparents, and to them as children. And then you have the audacity to say, "Oh, we want to nurture every child." No, you don't. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're not nurturing every child. You're nurturing some children. That's all I have to say. You should look hard at it.
Thank you. Tom McGuire, followed by Joanne Brooks.
Good evening. My name is Tom McGuire. I live on the west side of Jacksonville. And I just wanted to start with, as I was waiting for the meeting to start tonight, I was looking up one of these individuals, which was Mr. Joseph Finnegan. And it turns out that his only real claim to fame was he was part of the organization that moved Florida into secession. He did serve in the military in a small role afterwards, but he was instrumental in moving Florida into secession. And we all know that it is an undeniable fact that the reason these southern states seceded from the Union was over the issue of slavery. That's what this is all about. It is all about slavery. And that is why we cannot let these names stand. As for the cost, we were talking about the cost of Nathan Bedford Forest. I live in that area, and I can tell you that one of the things, this may or may not be part of the cost, but when it was Nathan Bedford Forest, they had a brick and metal sign. When it became Westside High School, they had an electronic sign. So that was an upgrade. That wasn't just a name change. They upgraded. That probably is part of the cost. We can do without upgrades if we just change the names. As for the rationale, why are we even naming these schools after military men? I really think we should consider naming them after educators and scientists and people who've contributed to the educational process. We live in a space coast here in Florida. There are 16 astronauts that I know who gave their lives for the space program that have not been recognized by schools here in Duval. I think Krista McAuliffe would be an excellent name for a school here in Duval, as she was an educator who gave her life to explore and further space and education at the same time. Also, I want to conclude with this one thought, because in maintaining these names, we perpetuate some bizarre messages. I passed by Jefferson Davis one day, and there was on their sign out front, it actually read, Jefferson Davis celebrates Martin Luther King Day. That's absurd. We need to change that. We need to make these names something that all the students in the school can be proud of, something they can all identify with. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Joanne Brooks, followed by Terry Tango Jordan.
If you can hear my voice, clap twice. Is that okay? Hello, my name is Joanne Brooks, and I'm sure some of you that are in the school system have heard that many times because the kids get out of control, right? Well, that seems to be what's going on right now. We need to hear what the people are saying. We need to stop, take a break, and realize that some people have done research and some people do need to do more research about the condition of Jacksonville. I am not from here. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. But since I've been here, I've experienced situations where I felt as though there was some tension in the room, just as it is now in the world. And I believe that Jacksonville has spoken through many of these protests, through the marches, through people making their voices heard. And I think that we need to listen to them. Just as Dr. Green mentioned, that the children need to feel valued, and sometimes they don't because we don't give them time. And I believe that we do need to change the names of the schools because they represent the negative side of history of Jacksonville. And if we don't research it and find in our hearts the truth between what happened in the past and rectify it right now, we're going to just continue this foolishness and mess for the future. And I don't believe God is smiling on this. You know, I know that you mentioned God earlier, but I think that he needs to be recognized here because he is in control of everything, no matter how you feel. It's very important that we change the names and take those statutes down. We do have bridges to gap, and that we should have some certain things for children in the clubs that they should have in schools, and the things for parents to understand that they should teach their children certain things about racism at home and teach them how to respond. I've had children in the class, I am a substitute teacher, that at least one of the young ladies, one of the kids in elementary school came to me crying because someone told her that she sounded white. And so I had to speak with her. Then there was another young child, a white young man, that kept putting his chair up, and I kept telling him to put his chair down or he's going to reap the discipline that he did. But the thing is that some people think they have privileges and some no, they don't. And we need to be on the same page with everything. So I hope and pray that you all come together and make a decision and be one, as Jacksonville should forget about the past and move forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry Tango Jordan, followed by Amanda Polk.
How y'all doing tonight? My name is Terry Tango Jordan. I am a lifelong resident of Florida, Jacksonville, Florida. I'm a product of the school system. I went to Jeb Stewart. I went to Jefferson Davis, and I was supposed to have graduated from Nathan Bedford Forrest. So I was particularly pleased when they changed the name of Nathan Bedford Forrest when I found out that he was the leader or the founder of the Ku Klux Klan, or he's credited as, you know, because that's a deep irony to have to carry around for a long time when you have a diploma and it has your name on it, and you have the name of a person who, for all intents and purposes, was the original domestic terrorist. They terrorized, you know, people who look like me, and that, you know, that's a heavy burden to carry. And for our leaders here in town, we've had these discussions over and over again, and there's this, you know, we give the appearance of a parody, like we're looking at both sides, but you can't be both sides about something like this because it's only one way or the other. You know, either you're racist or you're not racist. Either you support what they believed or you don't support what they believe. So it's incumbent upon the leaders, first of all, to make that distinction about what it is we're actually doing here. You know, it's really, it's intellectually dishonest to make it a debate. There is no debate, as many of my colleagues have said before. So one of the things that I'd like to leave with is some words of a person who I consider to be a leader, and I didn't really find out about her until well after I was out of school. Her name is Octavia Butler, and she's a science fiction writer. And she said, and this is a quote from one of her books, it says, "Choose your leaders with wisdom and forethought. To be led by a coward is to be controlled by all that the coward fears. To be led by a fool is to be led by the opportunists who control the fool. To be led by a thief is to offer up your most precious treasures to be stolen. To be led by a liar is to ask to be told lies. And to be led by a tyrant is to sell yourself and those you love into slavery." Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda Polk, followed by Ben Frazier.
Systemic racism starts the moment an African American child walks through Stonewall Jackson's doors. It continues with the higher suspension, which creates a deficit in student FTE funding. I've gone through and read every financial district data report of the high schools and middle schools. I should say I'm not shocked, but I am. I'm disgusted that the top 3 schools are majority white. The bottom 3 schools funded are African American. And not only that, when we talk about school choice, the top 3 schools that get all the money are utilized at 103%, 104%, and 105%. And the bottom schools are utilized at, I think the lowest one was 55%. So with that, school names, they mean something. Symbolism means something. That's why we love our flag. Children should love their schools. I don't see why this is an argument still, why this even needs to be talked about still. And when we talk about, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'm not a good public speaker, but I had to come say something. Past years, we've heard about the exorbitant costs associated with these name changes, when in reality, it's a fraction of the cost. Westside name was $198,000. Band uniforms, field, school board, all in. Elementary schools are far, far less. Painting, maybe a sign. And this money can come from the 3 to 5% general fund out of the $1 billion school budget. $1 billion. That's a lot of money. Money is no excuse anymore. The time to talk, there's no excuse anymore. We waited long enough. The Civil War has been over for 200 years. These were American traders who fought to keep human beings as slaves. Human beings. These are not people we need to look up to. These are not people who should have their names on our beautiful Friday night football fields. These are not people who we should admire to be like or want our children to celebrate. White, black, any color. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Frazier, followed by Gordon Terry.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Frazier. I'm with the Northside Coalition of Jacksonville. I'm its founder and president. First off, I'd just like to thank Chairman Jones and issue him my applause for his courage and his leadership, doing something that is not necessarily politically expedient, but something that he believes in his heart is right, position his board to stand on the right side of history. Interesting, the people that I've seen come up here and speak. Multi-generational, multicultural, multiracial. Same people I've been watching on TV. Yeah, right, same people. Northside Coalition is asking not only this board, but the mayor, the Jacksonville Civic Council, and the Jacksonville Chamber to support what we consider to be a reasonable demand. We're asking all the shareholders to join us as we all move forward in the support of our students, our teachers, and our schools. In the process of asking for the names to be changed, we want to make clear and to assure everyone that our fight is not an attempt to erase or eradicate history. It's not against Southern heritage. Southern heritage and Confederate heritage are two entirely different things. Southern heritage is collard greens, mac and cheese, and fish and grits. I like that. But I don't like Confederate heritage because I know that it fought to perpetuate slavery. Confederate heritage sought to destroy black families, our history, our culture. The names of these generals represent slavery, lynchings, racism. They represent the historical pain and suffering of 300,000 black residents. And for all of these reasons, these Confederate names should not be glorified in public spaces or places or spaces. They should in fact be removed. we don't want you to go through a whole bunch of quasi-intellectual analysis paralysis. We want you to get the job done, and if you don't, we'll be back down here calling for either more protest or for a recall. We're asking you to listen to the voice of the people. And Robert E. Lee never spoke out against slavery. As a matter of fact, one of the most interesting things I read about this guy is that he sought to keep his wife's 150 slaves in bondage, even though her father had ordered them to be released upon his death. He ordered the brutal lashing of two people, a man and a woman. He shouldn't be honored.
Thank you. Gordon Terry, followed by Gail Williams. Maybe that's Gail.
Glad when this coronavirus stuff's over with. My name's Gordon Terry. I live in the Lee High School district. I've lived here all my life. My wife's a graduate of Lee High School. I did not attend there. She did. But we both have many friends that graduated from Lee. But before I get into this, I want to thank Chairman Jones and the board for allowing the citizens and the people concerned on this issue to come before you and have open dialogue. I think that's very important. My focus here is Lee High School, obviously, and to start off, I never would have ever thought I would see American history under the nationwide attack we're seeing today. From monuments, historic markers, military bases, street signs, and now school names. And I'm not talking about just the low-hanging fruit of Southern history, but all American history. Has anyone given thought to when this madness will stop? Maybe after all American history is erased and the last book is burned. Tonight I'd like to ask how many board members have studied the life of Robert E. Lee? If you knew the kind of American he was and how he lived his life, this meeting would be over and we would all agree the school is appropriately named in his honor. Lee was the son of one of Washington's trusted lieutenants, Harry Lighthorse Lee. His wife was Mary Custis, great-granddaughter of Martha Washington, wife of George Washington. He graduated from West Point and served in the Mexican War and was later superintendent of his alma mater, where he was a successful educator. That's important. He was an educator. When Virginia seceded, after Lincoln called for troops to subdue the other southern states, Lee had a decision to make, whether to fight for Lincoln or defend his home state, not to defend slavery. He struggled over this. He was up all night trying to decide which way to go. He loved his country. He loved the United States. He was a U.S. soldier. But back then, you have to realize that people's loyalty were with states, not the federal government. That was their first love, was the state. So when Virginia seceded after Lincoln called for troops and he made the decision, Lee did, to go with the state. Incidentally, the few slaves Lee inherited from his father-in-law were freed before the war. Now, it's debatable whether he wanted to free them or not, but the point is they were freed. Remember, back in those days, one loyalty was with their home state. I discussed that. Therefore, Virginia won his services. After the war, Lee returned to his love of education by becoming president of Washington College and building it into the top, is that it? Top college is Washington Lee University. He lived his remaining days and is buried on campus. I tell you what, since I'm the only one speaking in defense, can you give me about 10 more?
No, sir, we have policies, 3 minutes per speaker.
Okay, all right.
But
You can submit your comments, email that to the board.
Thank you. 3 minutes goes fast. I've been there. Gail Williams, followed by Jason Bulger. I think it's Gail. Could be a Gabe. No. Okay. Mr. Bulger, followed by Paula Higgins.
Hi, my name is Jason Bulger. I live over in Arlington. Several of our schools need to be renamed. 6 especially egregious examples are Jefferson Davis Middle School, Robert E. Lee High School, Stonewall Jackson Elementary School, Kirby Smith Middle School, J.E.B. Stewart Middle School, and Joseph Finnegan Elementary. Davis, Lee, Jackson, Smith, and Stewart were all traitors to this republic who resigned offices of public trust to wage war against the United States. Joseph Finnegan may not have held such office before his treason, but after his treason, he reclaimed the mansion that he forfeited for his treason and then turned out the orphans of the orphanage it had become. He's hardly a man to name an elementary school after. Please rename these schools in a way that will uplift all students. The names on these buildings are entirely ceremonial. Let our ceremonial honors be reserved for those worthy of such honors. I'd also like to share a quote from Norman Schwarzkopf from my SMART book. The SMART book's the book they give you when you go to basic training to tell you how to be a soldier. And in the book, there's the quote from General Schwarzkopf, and he says, "The truth of the matter is, you know the right thing to do. The hard part is doing it." Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Higgins has a note here that she does not wish to speak, but she is attending in support of renaming the schools. Next, we have Jennifer Cowart, followed by Rich Gray. Ms. Cowart, Rich Gray, Linda Dyer,
Good evening. Can you hear me now? My name is Linda Dyer. I'm an early childhood educator, retired now. I've run Navy daycares. I've been a training curriculum specialist. I taught in Virginia Beach. You don't know me, but I live in this wonderful city. And Mr. Jones and board, thank you for having me. Dr. Green, thank you. I've never come before, and I saw the news all of a sudden you're having a meeting, and I wanted to know what it was about. And I really appreciate, yes, we're a God under country, and it's a heart thing. And I appreciate everything you said. I am not a racist. I didn't even know what a systematic racist was until I looked it up. I'm 69 years old. I went to an all-black college, Norfolk State, and I graduated in 1990. I do think changing the names is going to cost a lot of money. And somebody said, forget the money, but we've just gone through an awful pandemic that is still continuing, and people have lost jobs. But I really like Dr. Green putting a PowerPoint out and letting us know how everything goes. I wish everybody could get this. The taxpayers will end up paying for it. Do I want the name change? I don't really know, to tell you the truth. My parents took me to Gettysburg. I've seen Washington, D.C. I've had all the history, and my parents were good parents and didn't teach me racism, even though I've been told I'm systematic racism. I want you to increase your staff, Dr. Green. I want you to have education for everybody. I love children and I love parents. I do. And I love the city that I live in. I want the best for everybody. But sometimes money does get in the way, and we all know that. I'd rather have the money used for the 44% of the black students that really need it. I really would like to have the money for the 75% of those young adults that go into suspension. Do we need more social workers? A lot of our children don't have parents. They're living with grandparents. A lot of our children are living with a one-parent family. We need to get in there and educate the parents, and not saying about race relations, but educate them so they can read and write and help their children. I heard one mama was really upset. She didn't have the money for a computer when this all started. I feel for her. I think you need to use those millions of dollars and put it in the school system where it belongs. And then one gentleman said, perhaps we can go ahead and put a sign and it won't be that expensive. Well, go for it. But put the money to the children. I don't have any children here in Jacksonville. My child is growing up. He got a good education. And a good education is what everybody needs to be successful. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Our final 4 speaker cards do not wish to speak. We have Mary McDermott, who is in support of name changes, Joseph Robinson, who's in support of name changes, Nikenia Wright, who is in support of name changes, and Laura Redgunas, who's in support of name changes. And that wraps it up.
Thank you, Vice Chair Anderson. Appreciate those who took time to participate in the public comment section of our meeting. I see Michael Hawk. Is he here? Parent? Okay. We will hear now from the parent organizations. Michael Hawk, District Advisory Council Chairperson, Teresa Rogers, PTA President, and be followed by Vasco Eagle, Title I Parent Advisory Council Chairperson, Aaron Hutchison, Exceptional Student Education Advisory Committee Chairperson. Thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Good evening, Chairperson Jones, school board members, Dr. Green. It's good to see you all in person. I'm Teresa Rogers, President of the Duval County Council of PTAs and PTSAs, sharing tonight on behalf of DCC PTA. Even with the last part of the school year containing so much uncertainty, our PTAs and PTSAs were still hardworking and creative and came up with new ways to keep their membership informed, celebrate Teacher Appreciation Week, and tackle the required business of a 501c3. During the last few months, we were able to continue conducting our business at the county council level as well, and conducted a virtual awards ceremony for our local unit PTAs, which included video messages from the Florida PTA President and President-elect and our very own Superintendent, Dr. Diana Green. We also awarded $500 scholarships to 6 Duval County high school students. Our winners came from Atlantic Coast, Jean Ribault, Mandarin, Paxson, and Stanton high schools. During the remainder of the summer, we will be advocating for the half-penny sales tax for our schools. We will also be conducting virtual trainings for our local units and help them to not only prepare for the business of their year ahead, but also be adaptable to whatever changes the challenges of COVID-19 may bring, and most importantly, improving the diversity of their PTA communities and challenging themselves to be true leaders in this effort. And lastly, I want to add that our PTAs and PTSAs will be ready to partner and do our part during this crucial process for renaming our schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
To the chair, the superintendent, all the board members, it's good to see you all in person once again and not through some type of video chat. If you don't know, my name is Michael J. Hawk. I'm the District Advisory Council Chairperson. The last time we had an opportunity to meet, though, was in February, because as March came around and the stay-at-home orders came about, we had to cancel the rest of the meetings for the year. We do plan to have a virtual meeting at the end of this month, on the last Monday of this month, and all of you are invited to tune in. At that meeting, as has already been brought to my attention through several members, that the discussion that is ensuing or at hand right now will be discussed then. So since we have not had opportunity to discuss said issue, I would just voice to you what I would convey to, what I'm going to convey to the District Advisory Council. Now, we Again, this is not everybody else's position. I don't know where they stand because we haven't talked about it. But in, what was it, 1775, Lexington and Concord happened. There broke out a war, Revolutionary War. We're all familiar with Continental Army. Two generals rose to the occasion and began to fight. As things went on, one general made a calculation that he should join the other side. His name has become synonymous with traitors in trading. If you were ever called a Benedict Arnold, you knew exactly what that meant. And so then from there, my question to anybody would be, where is Benedict Arnold High? Where's the Benedict Arnold statue? Where's the Benedict Arnold Bridge? Where's the Benedict Arnold Monument? Oh, there is a Benedict Arnold Monument. It is in, I believe, Santiago, New York. It's actually a boot. And the boot does not bear his name, but in the battle that he was in Santiago, it was a battle and he was wounded in the foot. So if we were to take that same rational argument and try to take emotion out of it, because a lot of people are speaking with emotion, then when we look to these other men who were officers in the United States military who swore the same oath that I would have had to swear to defend the Constitution against foreign and domestic enemies, who went back on their oath like Benedict Arnold did, then we would have to put them in the same category as traitors to the country. So why then should we honor them with schools, bridges, monuments, if we're not honoring someone else who was a great general? We could name all the great things he did, but he was a traitor. And so, with that being said, if we stick with the rational argument, a lot of people who would say, well, you know, we got this history and we need to look at it and these things need to go because these things happened and, you know, my family was involved, so forth and so on. If you were to ask most of them, do you agree with what's going on in Washington right now, in Seattle, where they have this autonomous area of about however many blocks, they would all tell you, or most of them, I believe, would come to you and say, absolutely not. I believe the president should send in the National Guard. But they're just traitors. Then no. Antifa? No. Okay. So these same people who would stand and say these schools need to stand and these names need to stand would, I believe, really disagree with what's going on in Washington State. So that's where I'm at, and I'm glad that you all are discussing the issue. Things really have changed because the last time I was here, I was not here when you did change the name of Nathan Bedford Forrest. But I was here prior to the name being changed at the same discussion. And I remember leaving the meeting with the gentleman handing me a piece of paper that, as I read it on my way home, said that I should be glad that my ancestors were slaves and were brought here, and that I should honor those who were slave owners. That's what the paper said. And that I should honor those who were slave owners because now I have the opportunity to be in America. Times have changed because of all of the people who were speaking. We've only had one who came that decided they were in favor of not changing these names. And these are things that should have been done a long time ago. Lastly, I just do want to say, I heard some of you say, you know, when the kids find out, I want to let you know the kids know. When I moved to Jacksonville in 1974, my brother went to Jeb Stewart. My older brother went to Nathan Bedford Forrest. When my brother went to Stewart, he says, what does this Jeb stand for? J-E-B, because he noticed the periods. They said, go home, you figure it out and tell us. And so we did. My mother was an educator. She taught in Clay County. We went to the World Book, found out it stood for James Ewell Brown Stewart. He was a Confederate general, and we began to learn. So while I'm attending Forrest, I never forget, during a Halloween, a lot of kids decided that they would show up and represent the school in hoods and sheets. But it was the heritage of the school. There's nothing said. It's just the way it was in the 70s. And that's just what we had to deal with. So while I'm in the Air Force at anybody's base and we just begin to discuss high schools and things along those lines, and I tell people, oh yeah, I attended Nathan Bedford Forrest. Yeah, he was the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux. And you get a look. And that's not the look that anybody should want to have, to say, in some sense, I'm proud of my school, but then am I? We need to really think about it. Should be an easy decision. Shouldn't be much discussion. Hardest part should only be what are we going to name them, not whether the name should be changed.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hawk. I see no other parent organizations representatives here. Next, we hear from the employee organizations. Terry Brady, don't see her. Elton Brown, see here, don't see Elton. Jason Geiger, president of JSA. Ronnie Burris, business manager, Lyona. Chris Stovall, IBEW. And Steve Zona, FOP. No, none here. That the Duval County School Board approve the minutes for the meetings listed in the agenda item. May 12, 2020 special board meeting, May 12, 2020 board workshop, May 19, 2020 regular board meeting, May 27, 2020 board workshop, June the 2nd, 2020 committee meeting, June the 2nd, 2020 board workshop. I ask for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Vice Chair Anderson, second by Board Member Joyce. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, I call for your vote. Board Member Anderson, Vice Chair.
Yes.
Board Member Hershey.
I'm sorry, I had to unmute. Yes.
Board Member Willie.
Yes.
By action, you approve the minutes from those meetings 7-0. Approval of consent agenda. Are there any items to be placed on the consent agenda or items for discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I ask for a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Anderson.
Second.
Second by Board Member Joyce. Any discussion? I call for your vote. Vice Chair Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Hershey.
Yes.
Board Member Willie.
Yes.
By action, you approve the consent agenda 7-0. Discussion agenda, school choice and pupil assignments, School of Hope, performance-based agreement with Idea Public Schools, Idea Jacksonville #1. Dr. Green?
That the Duval County School Board approve the School of Hope's performance-based agreement for an initial 5-year term with Idea Florida Incorporated, and that the Duval County School Board authorize the chairman or vice chairman and the superintendent to execute the contract upon form approval by the Office of General Counsel.
Okay. I ask for a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Anderson.
Second.
Second by Board Member Joyce. I pull this item because this item and the next two items for Idea Schools, I think, is difficult for me to support when, on the other hand, we're closing and consolidating schools in some of these same neighborhoods. I think that I've heard from the residents who don't want to see that they don't want to lose the schools in their neighborhoods. That's part of the tradition of those neighborhoods, and I'll support that because I understand the need to provide more services for these schools. But to allow an entity to come in and fill the void simply because this city in Jacksonville has not provided the services that those communities needed. Infrastructure, whether it's infrastructure needs, whether it's poorly maintained parks, sewer lines that don't work. There's so many reasons why I think it's unfair. It seems like a concerted plan to neglect certain parts of this community, especially since consolidation. It's been going on for decades, but since consolidation and all the promises that were made, and now this board is faced with a choice of closing and consolidating schools simply because we as a community have neglected these neighborhoods. Here we have an entity that's coming in, and I can't say that they're sincere in their efforts to educate our children. I would hope they are. I also concerned that they may cherry pick. We had almost 3,000 students return from charter schools last year. So are they cherry picking, or are they really going after the kids that really need the help? I'm just not sure. And when you look at the persons who own the property, who benefit from the rent or lease payment, those management companies who benefit from managing the employment and payroll for those entities, are they in it truly because they want to improve the education of those students that they're servicing, or are they in it for personal gain? I think we have to begin to ask that question. So on these next three, I will be voting no on those three. Thank you, Madam. Thank you. Any other discussion? Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you, Chair Jones. Perhaps through the chair to Ms. Chastain, would you mind explaining what a School of Hope performance-based agreement is?
Good evening. Can you hear me? This system was created by the legislature in 2017 by enacting Section 1002.333 Florida statutes, and it established Schools of Hope, and it sets forth criteria for the School of Hope operator and how the State Board of Education, through criteria, approves the operator, and then sets forth something called a performance-based agreement that by rulemaking, the State Board of Education adopted a template, and it sets forth the criteria in the contract, and that's what's before you tonight. I can't go deeply into what a School of Hope does or what the performance-based agreement will be, because those documents are in front of you tonight, and the details are there. But I would point out that there is a paragraph called non-compliance, that if a school district does not enter into the performance-based agreement within 60 days after receiving the notice of intent from the applicant, which I believe in this case was April 23rd, more or less, and I think therefore the 60th day would be Monday, next Monday. So if a school district does not enter into performance-based agreement within 60 days after receipt of the notice of intent, then the district shall reduce the administrative fees that are withheld from charter schools under that statute to 1% for all charter schools operating within the school district. And then once the district enters into the performance-based agreement, then the district may resume from that point forward. It can't go back, but from that point forward, collecting the full administrative fee. It also says that any charter school that had administrative fees withheld in violation, for example, if we kept collecting, may recover attorney's fees and costs to restore the fees. So I did want to point out, so that you're informed in your decision, what the consequences should be should these items fail to carry.
Thank you, Ms. Chastain. for me, one of the things that I think is important in this particular item, and the two that follow that are also IDEA Schools of Hope, is that this has been taken out of the hands of the school board. That the Department of Education and the state has chosen the schools that are allowed to come in and be Schools of Hope operators, and we don't really get much say. And so, we are expected to approve, and they have a 5-mile radius. And I recall during the conversation and workshop as we talked about this item, and when you look at sort of the radius, the overlapping radius, becomes a kind of large space, larger than you might think 5 miles would be. I remember having a conversation with the individual who's going to be managing IDEA here, and something that rung, in my mind and continues to sit with me, was a conversation about the student that is a good fit for IDEA. And it, kind of centered around it might not be the right fit for every student. And I heard that, and I understand. I mean, they've got some rigor and some expectations, and they've got some goals to set, and I can respect that fully. But in the back of my mind, all I could think about was telling any parent or child that walked through our door that they're just not the right fit for us. And so it is a struggle to know that there will be children that might walk into this building hoping to get a free and equitable public education that might be told it's just not the right fit. And I think about what that is going to mean to the makeup of our classrooms and the challenges that we may face as a board, as a community, as neighborhoods, to wrap our arms around the children that are in our buildings and our schools, and the opportunity that we have to grow and improve. And I know that we talked about looking at the bigger landscape and the bigger scope of choice and options and charter, and what students have, what choices. And it will always be my hope that Duval County Public Schools provides the best choice. And so, because this has been taken out of our hands by the state, I am fired up and ready to make sure that all of the things that superintendent talked about in her report, that we are doing everything we can to make sure that our schools are safe havens, that we attend to the needs, both socially, emotionally, academically, physically, of the entire child that walks through our door every day. So, while I would rather not have to vote yes, I don't see that I have much option, and I will be ready to do some work to make sure that our schools are the best choice.
Thank you. Any other comments? Board Member Smith Juarez, and then Board Member Willie.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that Board Member Anderson expressed a lot of sentiments that I have felt over a long time on this board with regard to our charter contracts. I share the chair's concern about our neighborhood schools, about the disillusion of funding across school sites. And I also know that a legislature that touts home rule doesn't give us much option here. So for the interest of our district staff, who already we spend well in excess of the administrative fee that we are able to collect from charters to support them, to offer professional development, to assist them with financial defaults when they have them, to assist them with their applications and contracts when they bring them forward, with their school improvement plans. I don't feel like we have an extraordinary amount of leeway with this, except to make sure that our families really have clear understanding of what their choices are, and that we are doing some deep listening about what those needs are, about where our policy is meeting our practice and where our practices can be improved. I think our superintendent has done a great job of thinking through some of those things. And I too hope that we will be able to meet the needs of our students so that they don't need this many choices in this many places. The only additional clarification that I will make, or that I will ask through the chair to legal, while the school is required to locate within a 5-mile radius in order to be a Hope operator, are they limited to recruiting students from the quote-unquote failing school?
Through the chair to Board Member Smith Juarez, yes and no. So it's according to the statute, it's 5-mile radius or a Florida Opportunity Zone. In this case, the notice of intent talked about the 5-mile radius for these 3 schools, and I don't have the contract open, but I believe that they're by contract. Let me see if I can find it. I think there's a percentage of the students that would come from these areas. So let me see if I can find it. Ms. Peak, do you remember? Sorry, I have so many documents. If I don't put my eyes on it, I'll inadvertently give you the wrong answer. So in each contract, whether it's school number 1, 2, or 3, it's on page 3 of each of those documents, and it has it's paragraph G that says student recruitment and enrollment. The school will implement the student recruitment strategies and activities described in the notice of intent. Paragraph 1, the table below includes the projected recruitment enrollment targets for the school, and it's basically 60% of students that previously attended the schools, 60.
So I think that's also important when we talk about the intent of the legislation versus the practice. So thank you, Chairman.
All right, thank you. Board Member Willie.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity through the chair. I feel like I know that the tenor of the conversation is one that we're in sort of this helpless position at this moment. I do want us to, of course, ground us in the fact that these are students who are, these are our students, like regardless of where they go, and to think about it with that lens, which I think is truly and really important. So they need to, regardless of where they go, get the right attention. And I think we look at policy and we look at what happens at the state, and we sit on that and say we don't have a choice in that matter. But at the end of the day, like, we have these individuals, these entities, these charter companies are moving in, and I feel like we have to, if that is yet the case, and we need to make sure that we're doing all that we can to ensure, number one, we have the right organizations, they're going into the right places, and I still think we have some influence over that. And I think regardless of what the policy states, I still think that is possible from a board can't do anything, that's not productive. I think we have to figure out how we can organize and relate with and work with if this is going to happen. So I just want us to get into that mindset a bit, because you still are our students. They're still walking in our communities, and that is the key, and that is the grounding factor that I think of when I think about these decisions.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments?
Chairman Jones, may I say something?
Yes. Board Member Hershey.
I would just kind of like to build upon what Board Member Willie said. One thing is, I am thankful, and I think it's something we have to keep an eye on, however, that we do not have a state authorizer yet. And at least this still comes before the board, and it's not a decision made at the state level. And I think that when there is an opportunity to engage with a charter school, specifically Schools of Hope, and maybe they come to the district and they say, hey, we're trying to figure out where to locate, and maybe we can have a conversation with them to help them decide where to land. I think it's in our best interest to engage with them and to help direct them to be the best fit for our students. It is kind of a rock and a hard place in that, even a no vote could be a yes vote. It doesn't stop it from going forward, but at least we still have a say, and we don't have a state authorizer. And I think that when we can engage with them and have conversation about the best places for them to locate, we're going to be better off in the long run.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, I call for your vote. Vice Chair Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Hershey.
Yes.
Board Member Willie.
Yes.
I actually approve that item 6-1. School choice and pupil assignments, School of Hope performance-based agreement with IDEA Public Schools, Inc., IDA Jacksonville number 2. Madam Secretary, Madam Dr. Green.
That the superintendent, that the Duval County School Board approve the School of Hope performance-based agreement for an initial 5-year term with IDEA Florida Incorporated, and that the Duval County School Board authorize the chairman or vice chairman and the superintendent to execute the contract upon form approval by the Office of General Counsel.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Anderson.
Second.
Second by Board Member Joyce. Any discussion? Not, I call for your vote. Vice Chair Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Hershey.
Yes.
Board Member Willie.
Yes.
I actually approve that item 6-1. School choice and pupil assignment, School of Hope performance-based agreement with IDEA Public Schools, Inc., IDA Jacksonville number 3. Dr. Green.
That the Duval County School Board approve the School of Hope performance-based agreement for an initial 5-year term with IDEA Florida Incorporated, and that the Duval County School Board authorize the chairman or vice chairman and the superintendent to execute the contract upon form approval by the Office of General Counsel.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Anderson. Second by Board Member Joyce. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, I call for your vote. Vice Chair Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Hershey.
Yes.
Board Member Willie.
Yes.
I ask you to approve that item 6-1. School choice and pupil assignment, public hearing and vote, closure of Brentwood Elementary School number 15 at the conclusion of the 2020 through 2021 fiscal school year, and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into North Shore Elementary School for the 2021 through 2022 school year. Dr. Green, is that your recommendation?
Yes.
There's a public hearing.
Chairman Jones, should the superintendent read the?
I'm sorry, that's right. Dr. Green, would you read your recommendation, please?
That the Duval County School Board conduct public hearing on the closure of Brentwood Elementary number 15 at the conclusion of the 2020-21 fiscal school year and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into North Shore Elementary School number 70 for the 21-22 fiscal school year. And that the Duval County School Board, following the public hearing, approve the closure of Brentwood Elementary number 15 at the conclusion of the 2021 fiscal school year and the consolidation of its attendance boundaries into North Shore Elementary School number 70 for the 21-22 fiscal school year.
Okay. Public hearing is now open. Anyone here to speak to that item? Seeing none, public hearing is now closed. Any discussion? Board Member Willie?
Excuse me, Board Member, you need to ask for a motion.
Move approval.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Motion to approve by Vice Chair Anderson, second by Board Member Joyce. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none.
You call on me?
Okay.
Is Board Member Willie going to speak to that?
Do you want to speak to? Board
Yeah.
Member?
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Really, this has been a spirited discussion, and I really appreciate all of the input from the age groups as well as so many various community members and the district staff as well. One of the things I do want to make sure we clarify, there was a question that came up that I do want to make sure we get on the record, because as we move into North Shore and potentially other schools, at one point those schools were sort of slated as K-6, so there was some discrepancy there. So we want to get, through the chair, through the superintendent, a question around the process of notifying the FCOE each year about the grade configurations and what that looks like. So Dr. Green, if you could sort of speak to that for us quickly.
Through the chair to Board Member Willie. Yes, some years ago, the board did approve several schools to become K-8s, and I believe those schools would be North Shore, Carter G. Woodson had 6th grade, Bayview and Pinedale had 6th grade, and Ocean Way Elementary up until last year had 6th grade. Every year, we are required to submit to Department of Education the grade bands of every school. And even though those schools had 6th grade, those 6th grade classes either didn't make, they didn't have enough students, and so those 6th grade classes were closed. So North Shore and Carter G. Woodson haven't had 6th grade since the 16-17 school year. And Bayview and Pinedale have not had 6th grade since the 17-18 school year, and Ocean Way is the only elementary school, and I believe they may not have enough students to have sixth grade for this upcoming school year. So when those schools did not make sixth grade, the district simply reported to DOE that the grade band was kindergarten through 5. And please note, pre-K is not under the, sort of the auspices of K-12. Pre-K is different. So sometimes schools might have pre-K, but it is not under our guidelines of reporting grade bands. Did I answer your question, Mr. Willie?
No, that was great. There was some discrepancy, but that clears it up directly. I would say this: like this is there's never the perfect time to be able to have to make the decisions that we're having to make about any of this, especially around consolidations and mergers. I do think this is an opportunity for us to talk about equity, talk about us being proactive when it comes to where we are. So there's a lot of plans that were made when we talked about this bulk plan, when we're thinking about this half-penny master plan. These were parts of the conversation because we have a number of schools on the books. We don't have the right utilization. The growth in these areas is not where it needs to be to have the schools. The age of the facilities are really high and hard to maintain. And then also you have a number of schools, Brentwood included, that has a close approximation to a number of other schools. North Shore being one, that's about 1.7 miles away. That is fairly one of the newest schools, the newest school in all of my district. So this is the $1 million question, literally, because we're battling and sort of figuring out how do we ensure that we're doing right by taxpayers and community at the same time. And I think that's why we have to make tough decisions at this moment. So I'm going to support this recommendation, not without much reflection and much input from so many people, and I appreciate all that input. But as I look to the future, and as I look to us being proactive, we have to make decisions to ensure that all the resources are being funneled in the right way. And the way that we do that is to understand where our students are. And with this situation and the others we're going to vote on, there are a lot of pieces that just aren't there. The number of students to be able to have the right amount of resources for our students on the north side, especially in District 4, is not there. And this is not, I will say, this is not a reflection of the work that is happening in the schools at all. These are, especially this situation, it's a facilities. It's a landscape sort of lifting up and understanding where we are. There's great work happening in our schools, especially in Brentwood. The leadership there, and the teachers there, and the students are doing wonderful things. So it's not about that at all. So I'm ready to vote and support the recommendation of the superintendent. And I think one of the other major questions is what happens with those facilities. What happens with that facility once this happens? And I think I'm already in conversation with folks on the city side, our city council folks, to ensure as this vote goes, if it does go this way, we're making sure that we're taking care of that community and understanding the history in that building and understanding what is possible and what could be possible. So I stand in support of the recommendation from the superintendent on this item.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? Board Member Smith Juarez.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the community engagement and those who served on the ACE committee and who have been part of the process. I was listening to the most recent meeting that happened, and there was a question that came from one of the ACE committee members that hit me very hard, and that I think bears repeating this evening for both clarification and to directly address the question at this meeting. And the question was surrounding Brentwood as a school, the year that it was built, the enrollment that it currently has, and that there are similarly situated schools that were built in the same year, that have a similar enrollment, that are not slated for consolidation or closure. They might be slated for a renovation. They might be slated for an addition. but they are not slated for closure in their neighborhoods. And the one that was called by name was Central Riverside. There are schools that have been historically neglected, and there are schools that have gotten investment over years. And some of that contributes to why Brentwood is in the condition that it currently is. So through the chair to the superintendent, could I ask that you address the rationale for the recommendation to close and consolidate the neighborhood school of Brentwood, while the master plan does not call for the same plan for, and I'll let you sort of address, but for schools that may have been built in the same year or may have a similar enrollment.
Through the chair to Board Member Ms. Smith Juarez, you indicated Brentwood and Central Riverside. Earlier today, I had the wrong number for Central Riverside. So the FCI is just about the same. Brentwood's FCI is at 30.29, which is a high FCI, meaning that it has a lot of issues. And Central Riverside FCI is at 30.20. So they're pretty much very similar. When we look at the master facilities plan, there are 3 factors that impact any project that is recommended. Number 1, the FCI of that facility. Number 2, the enrollment study. Remember, we did an enrollment study. It's 10 years back and then 10 years forward. Well, if you look at the enrollment study of these 2 schools, Brentwood enrollment study is showing a decline in enrollment, where Central Riverside's enrollment study is showing either maintaining or a slight uptick. Then that's factor number 2. Factor number 3, what is the utilization rate of surrounding schools? If those surrounding schools have a better FCI than the school that has a poor FCI, which in the case that would be Central Riverside and Brentwood. And the schools that are surrounding Central Riverside is West Riverside. Its FCI is at 12.08. Its capacity is at 76%, and Ruth Upston Elementary FCI at 12.56, and its utilization is at 82%. The issue is that you cannot fit Central River into these 2 schools because the utilization is pretty high. Whereas in the case of Brentwood Elementary, even though its utilization is very high, their enrollment is at 337 students. They're at 89% utilization, but again, their FCI is very high and their enrollment study shows decline. The schools that are near Brentwood would be North Shore, and at the time, North Shore's capacity was somewhere between 550 to 650. Now, with Lake Forest closed and consolidated, their enrollment is at 774, which is at 58% capacity. The school has the capacity of 1,329 seats. Therefore, and because that is the newest or the least oldest facility within a less than 2-mile radius of Brentwood and Lake Forest, it was determined that these 2 schools could merge into North Shore with an FCI of only 12.41 and still not reach to 90% capacity. With Brentwood merging into North Shore, it will be somewhere between 80 and 85% capacity. So that is the difference between Brentwood and Central Riverside.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation, and I think it's important as we speak to community, and as I said to the superintendent when we spoke about this, it is really, really hard to look community in the eye and say what we can deduce and how we can best serve you is to consolidate your neighborhood school. I don't think anybody on this board takes that lightly. We've had a lot of conversation about it, and in fact, this board extended the timeline. I will note with my objection only because I give this board credit, because I think the extended timeline allowed for more conversation and allowed for a better understanding of how we can phase a transition and have more conversation and more dialogue and better opportunity to transition into a facility that is much, much newer, and that will allow for a lot more diverse and vibrant programming because of the size and the enrollment of the school. So while this is not an easy decision, I understand and have heard about the desires for increased and diverse and vibrant programming. And I know we can't necessarily do that without a larger school. So the only other question that I have through the chair to the superintendent, when we had spoken about this particular recommendation as a board, the attendance zone of Brentwood is a little patchy. And we had talked about the possibility of really engaging a dialogue about the distribution of that attendance zone. Is that something that was done as part of this process? Is that something that you anticipate revisiting, or is that something that you feel has been resolved?
That was not a part of this process. However, you have many other attendance zones that are a little sketchy.
Patchy, I said.
Oh,
Meaning they're
patchy.
not
Okay, I'm
contiguous.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I only heard
The mask
etchy. I
makes it
thought you said
difficult.
sketchy. Sorry.
Patchy.
Patchy. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. They're a little patchy. So this would need to be a much bigger conversation. However, based on the other consolidations, we think it makes it a little better.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that, and would just remind the stakeholders in the Brentwood community that the SAC can have that conversation moving forward if it so desires. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? I just want to add too that I was privileged to be on that community meeting. I go to meetings, and I heard the passion that the residents spoke about losing their school, the neighborhood school, and I can say that I don't think any member of this board wants to take a long-standing institution from a neighborhood and displace students, and people forget that there are people who live in Jacksonville who are transportation dependent. And when I heard a parent tell me at one of the meetings we had earlier that I could walk to that school if something happens to my daughter, but if you close that school, I don't have a way to get to the next school. I gotta walk or get a transportation. So those are some issues that we have to be mindful of and sensitive to. But as Board Member Smith-Juarez pointed out, having additional programming, having a newer facility, diverse programming that we probably couldn't afford to put in Brentwood as it's situated now, I think bears supporting this effort. And I feel I sympathize and I empathize with the residents who on their call, who pleaded and asked for that we come up with a way to save that school. But I realize that we're boxed in. We have to provide better service, and this is a way to get it to the students. And we have to be student focused, and I think it's important to maintain that. Yes, Dr. Green. Sorry.
Through the chair to the board, I just want to add that when we consolidated Lake Forest, we made sure there was a bus stop at the school because we knew students could walk to the school. And so we will do the same for Brentwood, though we're a year out. The recommendation would be that there's a bus stop at the school that would support those students who were walkers to the school.
Thank you. The lady who spoke to me, she wasn't talking about the students. She was talking about her getting to the school if something happens.
I'm just saying if she can get to the bus, we can get her to the bus stop.
Okay. Seeing no other hands or voices, I call for your vote. Vice Chair Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Hershey.
Yes.
Board Member Willie.
Yes.
By your action, we pass that item 7-0. School choice and pupil assignments, public hearing and vote. Closure of John Love Early Learning Center, number 73, and consolidation of attendance boundaries into Long Branch Elementary School, number 106, for the 2020 through 2021 school year. Dr. Green, did you read your recommendation?
That the Duval County School Board conduct a public hearing on the closure of John Love Early Learning Center, number 73, at the conclusion of the 2019-20 fiscal school year and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into Long Branch Elementary School, number 106, for the 2021 school year, and that the Duval County School Board, following the public hearing, approved the closure of John Love Early Learning Center, number 73, at the conclusion of the 2019-20 fiscal school year and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into Long Branch Elementary School, number 106, for the 2021 school year.
Public hearing is now open. Anyone here to speak to that item? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Anderson, second by Board Member Joyce. Any comments?
Yes.
Board Member Willie?
Yeah, this is once again through the chair another situation, and one of the key factors in this vote is around the utilization of each of those schools, and I'll sort of throw that to the superintendent to talk about what the utilization of each of those schools were, and then my question to sort of answer, because I think this comes up in this scenario and the one we previously voted on, or sort of what that means. We talk about economies of scale when it comes to a school and the size of that school. And if you could just speak to, for the public, like what does that mean when you hit a certain economies of scale, number of teachers and support, just so folks have an idea of what that is, because I think that's ultimately what we're talking about, is ensuring programs and resources for our students. So can you speak to that, to the chair, to the superintendent?
Through the chair, I think I heard Board Member Willie.
You're very muffled.
It was a little muffled, but this consolidation will combine John Love, which is a kindergarten through second grade school that shares the same attendance area as Long Branch Elementary, which is a 3 through 5 school. Because the size of Long Branch Elementary is about 150 students and John Love is about 250 students, it is very hard to provide those support services to such small schools. So for Long Branch, they have a 0.2 physical education teacher, 0.2 music, 0.2 art, and hopefully by combining these two schools, they still will be it still will be a very small school, but at least we can focus on getting a full-time art teacher, full-time PE teacher, music teacher for the consolidation of John Love with Long Branch. Did I answer your question, Board Member Willie?
You did. Sorry, I was muffled. I'll try to speak more clearly into the phone. No, that's exactly what I wanted you to speak to, because I think that is ultimately, when I think about equity amongst our schools, and we were talking about this even in the beginning conversation around the statutes, like equity for our kids, especially our African American students. That's it. Like making sure that they have the right amount of resources, and that's why that's why we're in this tough position. Yes, some of it comes from systemic issues where schools aren't taken care of, but also we have a changing landscape of where people live, where people are choosing to move, and where folks are choosing to go. So that's a very important piece of information that you just delivered, and I appreciate that. And this one I will support as well. The utilization, as mentioned, is extremely low in both of these schools. And as I walked those schools pre-COVID, like it was sad to see how underutilized the school was, and to think that you have a great facility, and now we have an opportunity with these votes to be able to have students in schools that are either new or slated to be renovated. So I just think about how empowering that is for our students to be able to have that in the future. So I would support this recommendation. And once again, thank you to the folks who on these committees and staff who took time and energy into those meetings.
All right, thank you, Board Member Willie. Any other questions, comments? If not, got a motion second. Call for your vote. Board Member Vice Chair Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Hershey.
Yes.
Board Member Willie.
Yes.
By action, you approve that agenda item 7-0. School choice and pupil assignments. Movement of St. Clair Evans Academy, number 124, at the conclusion of the 2019-2020 fiscal school year, and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into the repurposed Northwestern Middle School site for the 2020-2021 school year. Dr. Green, read your recommendation.
That the Duval County School Board, following a public hearing, approve the closure of Carter G. Woodson Elementary School, number 166, at the conclusion of the 2021 fiscal school year if the school earns a C or better, and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into the K-5 elementary school located at the repurposed Northwestern Middle School site for the 21-22 school year, contingent upon Carter G. Woodson attaining a school grade of C or better for the 2021 school year. That the Duval County School Board, following the public hearing, approve the closure of Carter G. Woodson Elementary School, number 166, at the conclusion of the 2021 fiscal school year if the school earns a C or better, and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into the K-5 elementary school located at the repurposed Northwestern Middle School site for the 21-22 school year, contingent upon Carter G. Woodson attaining a school grade of C or better for the 2021 school year.
Thank you. Public hearing is now open. Seeing no one, public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Anderson, second by Board Member Joyce. Discussion. Dr. Green.
Chairman Jones, we need a ruling from Ms. Chastain, because what I read is partially correct. It does not include the, and maybe I'm missing a piece of script and I just don't know it.
Ms. Young is behind you. It looks like she might have
Yes.
some information.
To the chairman, I think the script may not be in order of the agenda.
Okay.
I'm looking at it. Give me a moment. Yes, sir, the script is not in order, so if Dr. Green, we are on agenda item 43, which is the public hearing and vote, which is the movement of St. Clair Evans Academy, and I don't think that's what the script says.
No.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Am I correct?
May I? Through the chair, to Ms. Chastain, yes, the script does not reflect the recommendation for St. Clair Evans. The agenda item does properly reflect St. Clair Evans, and Dr. Green, I think, now has the recommendation in front of her.
Great, so the order is the agenda, not the script. So the item is, the title is Movement of St. Clair Evans Academy number 124 at the conclusion of the 2019-2020 fiscal school year and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into the repurposed Northwestern Middle School site for the 2020-2021 school year. And then I believe Dr. Green has the recommendation.
Okay, you want to read your recommendation, Dr. Green?
That the Duval County School Board conduct a public hearing on the movement of St. Clair Evans Academy at the conclusion of the 2019-2020 fiscal school year and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into the repurposed Northwestern Middle School site. That the Duval County School Board, following the public hearing, approved the movement of St. Clair Evans Academy at the conclusion of the 2019-2020 fiscal school year and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into the repurposed Northwestern Middle School site.
Okay. Well, now, public hearing is now open. Anyone to speak? Public hearing is now closed.
Approval.
Moved by Vice Chair Anderson, second by Board Member Joyce. Discussion. Any comments, Board Member Willie?
Yeah, once again, this one, this is a unique. All of these situations or scenarios are unique. This one comes as we think about Northwestern and what we had to do there, and not having that open at the middle school, and then sort of merging those two. I think the biggest part of the nuance here is around the Carter G. Woodson piece. I know that's been a big conversation. So for clarity, through the chair to the superintendent, can you explain for the record that as we think about this now, because of the school grade and COVID and other things, we're in a different situation. Can you explain that piece and how that actually affects where we are? Hopefully that wasn't muffled. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Through the chair to Board Member Willie. The situation we are in with St. Clair Evans and Carter G. Woodson consolidation is that because of COVID-19, we did not have the end-of-year FSA assessment. And because we did not have an end-of-year FSA assessment, all schools retained their current school grade. When we began the process, it was made clear that Carter G. Woodson would have to earn a C or higher. And all of our data indicated that they were headed in that direction. And we felt comfortable that once they would take FSA, that their data would come back and show that they would at least be a C. Under the new guidelines for schools that, whether you close a school and reopen a school, if you are combining two schools, the school that has at least 50% or more than 50% of the population, that is the schools whose grade the new school would have to take on. Currently today, St. Clair Evans is a school grade of B, and Carter G. Woodson is a school grade of F. Carter G. Woodson has the larger population, and therefore, if we consolidated both schools into this new school, the school would open up with the grade of F, because Carter G. Woodson has the more than 50% of the population. And therefore, we are only recommending transitioning St. Clair Evans to the new school. It will receive a new school, St. Clair Evans will retain its school number, therefore it will open up as a school grade of B.
Boardman Willie, any other questions or comments?
No, I appreciate that. And so, for the record, once again, just a further clarification on that. So, what does that mean if the school were to open as an F? What does that mean for how that school starts off? What sort of eyes and guides they're under as they move forward even in that first year?
Well, the school, through the chair to Board Member Willie, the school would be under DOE sort of review. If the school did not improve to at least a C or better, the school would be under that section where either we close it and hand it over to a charter school, or we hire an external operator. And that is why we feel compelled that we cannot open the school up with a pretty much a brand new school and open it up with a school grade of F.
Thank you for that, and that I'll be supporting this recommendation as well. It's a tough one again, because I think this ACE committee definitely came in and had really robust conversation and wanted to see that, because it makes sense to have those two schools go in utilization purposes. The renovations that are going to be happening at Northwestern, happening at Northwestern too. So that makes it a little tricky with the situation because of COVID, because of the school grade. But I also know that Carter G, and I know Board Chair Jones will speak to this. Someone spoke earlier around the failing school. They were working their way through that. A lot of great resources were pushed in. The teachers were doing a fantastic job. It was slated for more than that, and that's why these conversations were going the way they were going. So it's just unfortunate timing that we sit in right now. So I'll pause there and yield the floor.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, I call for your vote. Vice Chair Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Hershey?
Yes.
Board Member Willie?
Yes.
By action, that item passes 7-0. School choice and pupil assignments. Closure of Carter G. Woodson Elementary School at the conclusion of the 2020-2021 fiscal school year, and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into the K-5 elementary school located at the repurposed Northwestern Middle School site for the 2021 to 2022 school year, contingent upon Carter G. Woodson attaining a school grade of C or better for the 2020-2021 school year. Dr. Green, your recommendation?
That the Duval County School Board, following public hearing, approve the closure of Carter G. Woodson Elementary School number 166 at the conclusion of the 2021 fiscal school year, if the school earns a C or better, and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into the K-5 elementary school located at the repurposed Northwestern Middle School site for the 21-22 school year, contingent upon Carter G. Woodson attaining a school grade of C or better for the 2021 school year. That the Duval County School Board, following the public hearing, approve the closure of Carter G. Woodson Elementary School number 166 at the conclusion of the 2021 fiscal school year if the school earns a C or better, and consolidation of its attendance boundaries into the K-5 elementary school located at the repurposed Northwestern School site for the 21-22 school year, contingent upon Carter G. Woodson attaining a school grade of C or better for the 2021 school year.
Public hearing is now open. Anyone here to speak to that item? Seeing none, public hearing is now closed.
Approval?
Moved by Vice Chair Anderson, second by Board Member Joyce. Any discussion? I think Board Member Wheeler asked several of the questions that I had, but Dr. Green, can you speak to the opportunity scholarships that those students at Carter G. Woodson would have the opportunity to still, if they choose to go to Northwestern?
Through the chair to the board, the students will have an opportunity for opportunity scholarships. We will choose 2 to 3 schools that have school grades of C or better for them to make a decision or indicate their intent to attend one of those schools. We have a requirement under opportunity scholarships to provide transportation, and the new school, whatever the name of that new school will be open because it will have a school grade of C or better. That will be one of the options that they can choose.
And if the school, I know the state requires we take another option, but students who want to continue to remain at Carter G. Woodson can do so this coming school year, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the community, hopefully we'll have opportunity to have some more discussions about what happens in the future. I know they hate losing that institution, but they're sandwiched between 2 schools, whatever the new Northwestern would be, and George Washington Carver. So hopefully we can provide some direction and support to those families who want to have further discussions. I look forward to that. Any other comments? Board Member Smith.
Can I ask?
Smith Juarez, and then Board Member Willie.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. So again, these are not easy decisions, and some of the difficulties have been raised. As hard as it is to look into the eyes of a community and explain the consolidation of their school, to look into the eyes of students who have worked incredibly hard over a year and relay that their school will not receive a grade, and therefore the work that they have done will not be reflected, but they will continue with their grade from the previous year. And the, as I call it, accountability gymnastics that will ensue. And it's not accountability avoidance. It is accountability gymnastics, because these students, the staff, their families have invested in making sure that they did the work this year to improve the school grade. And so now we are faced with a decision of leaving this school to continue their hard work and demonstrate what we know likely would have happened this year if they had received a grade. It's just, can't think of a word I should say into the microphone. So I don't like it. So I feel the comments that I heard from some of the current parents and former parents viscerally about this particular decision. And even, you know, we did hear tonight from the podium as well. So because we understand the situation and because we want to do best by these students and families, and you've already explained with the previous agenda item the difficulty of opening a school grade that inherits, whether worthy or not, inherits the previous grade of a school. I would just ask that as we think about this and we counsel with families about their best choice and the best place for them and for their students, that we are at least able to offer the Carter G. Woodson community for the 2020-2021 school year a building with windows. And so I will support the item because cognitively I can follow the accountability gymnastics that are necessary here. But I would ask through the chair to the superintendent that we look into moving the Carter G. Woodson school community to the St. Clair Evans building for even next year. And this is something I spoke with the superintendent about. I'm not springing this on her. Because you know, those of us who were on the call with those who engaged in this process, there was a school counselor who was weeping for her children. And I think that's something that we could do to ease the transition for these children, is to give them a building that is better suited before they get a building that is even better suited for them. So thank you. That's my only comment to say this evening, so that the rest of the board hears it. Would welcome other comments on that point, but I had mentioned it to the superintendent first. I saw a couple of surprised eyes, which I can understand. But I do think that that would be of benefit to that school community.
All right. Thank you very much. I hadn't thought about that. Board Member Willie.
Yes. So one of the things that came up in this discussion, and it came up in a lot of discussions, so just to get some clarity, and this is a question through the chair to Dr. Green, was around programming within schools. Some of the age groups came with general recommendations, and some were very specific on what type of programming they would like to see. Can you speak to that process and who actually has that decision-making power when it comes down to that? Because I think that was a question that came up a couple of times on our community call.
Through the chair to Board Member Willie, the ACE process actually does not speak to programming, what type of programming they would like at a school. There is a process that they would work with Ms. Peak's office. I did share with Ms. Peak to share with the group. The concern is I could not make programming a part of the recommendation. One, we're not sure how that programming will be funded. We are not sure how we can support the programming. And it's more important that, one, if this is what the school wants to do, that we position ourselves where we can actually financially support the programming. I know it came up in the meeting that Carter G. Woodson is supposed to be a medical magnet. And really, there hasn't been a lot of investment in a medical magnet. And I did not want to promise something that I could not fully deliver, especially since we don't even have a current signed budget for the upcoming school year.
Thank you for that clarity. I think that's helpful as folks are wondering, because I know a couple of age groups actually put in their recommendation thoughts around programming, but I know that we try to ensure that that's a school-based decision, and working with, of course, the school choice office. So I appreciate that information. I think this is so close to what the work of St. Clair, and I just would once again, the folks who were on those calls, board member Chair Jones and I, if you do not know, we actually have an additional meeting just because we wanted to gather more input. We wanted to hear more voices and give folks the right and the most accurate information that we could. So I appreciate Chair Jones for hosting that and having that with me, but also the community members who came and spoke and were very passionate about ensuring that every single student, especially those ones that those kids at Carter G, in this environment with this recommendation, get the right resources. And that's my last question, and I'll yield, is around those resources. What does it look like? What do the resources look like at Carter G to ensure that we are maintaining and moving in that right direction, which we already were? What was already in place, so folks just have a record of that?
Was that a question?
Yes, the last question was around the resources that were already at Carter G to ensure that it was moving towards that C already, just so we can have that on record.
Dr. Green, did you?
What resources do they have that will help them move to the C?
Oh, through the chair to Board Member Willie. First of all, Carter G. Woodson had made tremendous strides this school year. We started the school year with a principal and a master principal. So the school technically had two principals. One that was there to support the school through the day-to-day operations, and then the master principal, which actually was Miss Polydor, who just moved her school from a school grade of D to B to support Carter G. Woodson. We have invested in programs that this board has voted on: reading mastery, SRA corrective reading, athletics, mathematics supplemental program, based on all the things that we have done through, whether it is UNICEF grant, Title I funding, TESA funding. We've invested close to $3 million in support and resources for Carter G. Woodson. That's why we had a high level of confidence that they weren't going to remain a school grade of F, that we shared with the board the new way we are doing our quarterly assessments. We saw our PMA data. We had PMA data 1, PMA data 2, and in both instances, it showed Carter G. Woodson being predicted to be a C school. Unfortunately, again, COVID-19 happened, and we went to Duval homeroom. We believe that we still have another very strong support system in place with what's happening now with our virtual summer school, and the board will find out more at the workshop. We all just were involved in a webinar with the Department of Education. We will be receiving money for summer learning, and so we will start the baby steps to reopening by having live face-to-face summer school in July. And it is specifically for students that we're trying to close this we say close the achievement. We don't even know how far the gap is, the learning loss is, since they've been through Duval homeroom since March 23rd. So we've invested the necessary resources, the necessary support. We also have district staff who pretty much spend their Monday through Friday at Carter G. Woodson providing that support, as well as the school that's right down the street from George Washington Carver. We've invested the same amount of resources to both of those schools to lift them up out of the school grade of a D or an F to become a C. I do want to share the first year that I was here, the team
worked to move 35 schools were on the persistently low performing list. We went from 35 down to 21. That was a massive jump to go from 35 schools to down to 21 schools. We believe we have the right plan. We believe we have the right team. Not only the right team, but probably one of the strongest leadership teams in the state of Florida, or I'd put them up against anybody in this nation that has this heart for children, but also we're going to make people do what they need to do and get the work done for these students, because we believe they can do it. It does, but it's a heavy lift.
Thank you so much for that. And I wanted to make sure we didn't leave the conversation thinking we weren't supporting students, and I know the resources that have been poured in, and I appreciate that answer. So thank you so much. I appreciate that, Dr. Green. I'll yield now.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, questions? If not, I call for your vote. Vice Chair Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Hershey?
Yes.
Board Member Willie?
Yes.
By your action, you've approved that agenda item 7-0. For the record, Board Member Willie, you want to start us off?
Sure. We're at for the record already?
Yes.
Already?
Already.
Hey, sir, I had a couple more hours on my calendar. Kidding. I'll just say, number one, once again, these decisions aren't always easy. The ones that we're making about mergers, closures, even making decisions and sort of understanding school names. They're not easy, but I will say this: like we all, I'm speaking to my fellow board members, we got elected to represent and sort of be bold and stand in sit in these seats and really represent community. So I appreciate the comments and us really thinking boldly about how we move forward, and I look forward to that. And I just also want to just mention the fact that we have a dynamic staff, a dynamic superintendent, and oftentimes I think if you're on the outside looking in, it can easily be considered, hey, if you're focused on this issue, you cannot be focused on other things. But we have a multifaceted, dynamic, highly intelligent staff and superintendent who can look at different parts of this work. And I say that because oftentimes when you are so focused on one issue, you forget that other things are happening in other places all the time in a district like this. So I just commend the staff and the superintendent from the work on COVID to the work on even the presentation today, superintendent, and even through as we're making decisions about reopening. I just think about the dynamic nature of what we're doing every day and what people just don't see. And I'll also say this, like oftentimes folks say, and I've heard this so many times about conversations we're having, you can't change things overnight. But at the end of the day, we can make decisions overnight that can change things immediately. And I think we're starting to do some of that, so I really appreciate it. And I'm ready to be on the right side of this. And I'm excited about what it's become. I'm excited about the task penny. I'm excited about the resources that are going to be poured in to District 4 and across all of our school systems. We're moving in that right direction. So I'll say that. I'll say thank you so much for everyone, their work as we're moving through this, as we're moving sort of into summer, and I'm excited about how we shift and move forward to how we open up come fall.
All right, thank you, Board Member Willie. Board Member Hershey, for the record.
Well, for the record, this is one of the longest board meetings that I think we've participated in since we've been on the board. I just want to say that I think tonight's conversation and even the vote demonstrates that this board, while we are each elected to represent a specific district, we consider the whole district and every student when we make decisions. And I think that was demonstrative tonight. And I looked at the list of names of schools that we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, and there are some of us who will not be directly impacted by those community conversations, and some on the board who will be greatly impacted. But even for those of us who do not have a school in our community with a Confederate name, chances are we have people in our community who have strong feelings one way or the other. And it is never easy to make tough decisions. And again, I will say if it was, I think this would have already been tackled by another board. I am proud of the leadership of the board and of Dr. Green to tackle the tough issues and to begin a conversation. And I hope that our community, as community meetings unfold and as things continue, will get engaged in that conversation. I am looking forward to the start of the school year and the conversation that will come with that. And I just want to thank Chairman Jones for your leadership and Dr. Green for your innovation and ability to have so many irons in the fire and to keep Duval County schools moving forward.
All right. Thank you. Mrs. Grimes.
Yes, I'm the oldest one here, and I think I'm past my bedtime. So I'm going to give it all to y'all.
All right. Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you. It's been a night. It's been a long night, and there are some common threads that I think we are hearing woven through a lot of the conversation and a lot of the difficult decisions and the choices that this board has to make. That brings me to last month I couldn't pick just one quote or word of wisdom, and this month I find myself in the same position because we have so much going on, and I think things are resonating with me personally. And so Theodore Roosevelt said, "No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care." And we are in a position as a school system to lead by example, to show how much we care. I appreciate the superintendent's comments in her report about building trust and valuing our students, because they do deserve healing. Our community deserves healing. I had the opportunity to participate in the council's virtual meeting about the broken promises of consolidation and their efforts to move forward with that. And I think that this board plays a role in how we'll continue to move that conversation forward. And as we sit here with the weight of closing schools that we know are in communities that have been underserved and left behind, and then the hard work falls to us to listen to folks that are crying, that are saying, please don't close the school in my community. It's tough, but we have an obligation and a responsibility to do our part to build trust with our community, and we can do that. I think that when we look at building relationships, that test scores will come, that discipline will come, and when we're looking at closing gaps or, and I hate achievement gap, right? It's not a gap, it was a debt to begin with. It was a debt to begin with because the system was built this way. And so I hope that as we move forward and we start looking at name changes for our schools, that folks remember that this is an invitation to the table to have a really important conversation. And I am so proud to be a part of a board that is willing to continue to act with integrity to do the right thing, right? There is an ache, there is a need in this community to talk about it. Let's talk about it, right? Do I know where it's gonna end? I don't know where it's gonna end, but let's talk about it. Maybe I'm a therapist and I like talking. I'll give you that. But I think that there's a lot of healing that comes through these conversations that I'm looking forward to. So the folks that were here tonight, the people that live in these communities that are alumni, please get involved. And if you don't understand, because maybe you were raised in a different era and you're just now hearing the term systemic racism and you don't really know what privilege is, please be involved in these conversations. I sat with a person in my office today, and she said, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what is the right thing to say. You know, she has ache and compassion and guilt in her heart, and she wants to do the right thing, and she's not sure how to move. And I think when we sit down to have these conversations together as a community that I am so proud to help facilitate as a school board member, that we remember the words of Maya Angelou, which brings me to my second quote, which means I'm almost done. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And so we're at a point where it's not enough to say, well, I didn't know. I wasn't raised that way. I'm from a different time, generation, culture, era, whatever. When we sit down and we talk to each other, we'll learn. And when we know better, we can do better. And so I invite the community. I am glad to be a part of a board that continues to act with integrity to do the right thing by children. It's called cognitive dissonance in my field. When you are a person who, Mr. Hawk was up here, right? And you're cheering for your school or you're cheering for your alma mater, but somewhere in the back of your mind, it's not quite right, right? And so what happens to our children when they sit in a building that isn't up to par with the physical capital needs of the building? What happens to our children when they sit in a building that is named after something, an ideal that is fundamentally dissonant from their purpose as a human? And so I think that until we are willing to address those underlying emotional, social needs of children, rebuild trust, invite conversation, learn so we can do better, then we're going to continue to see achievement gaps. We're going to continue to see problems. And so I do feel that discipline will come and test scores will come, and we can be the best choice for our neighborhoods when we are brave enough and bold enough to allow the community to have these conversations and to be a part of them even when it's hard. And so I'm excited about the future of Jacksonville because I want this school system to be a system that people can say they're proud of. And I'm glad to help be working with all of you and the superintendent at this point in time in our history.
Thank you. Well said. Board Member Joyce.
I don't have anything for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Smith-Juarez.
I will say two quick things. One, I have worn this facial covering for the entire meeting. It just hit 10 o'clock. So really since I came in the building at 4:55. So we'll say 5+ hours. And I don't prefer it. It's not what I would choose were we not in the pandemic that we are. And so I just thought that it was worth noting that it's doable for the work that we know we need to do beyond the facial coverings. I fully recognize that I am a grown adult and that we'll work across a spectrum to assist with it. But I did this intentionally. And then second, if you all haven't been part of the 11 o'clock vote club, you're not allowed to complain about the length of a meeting.
We don't,
So-
we don't want to be a part of that club. Sorry.
Right, and I'm not going to initiate you this evening, so I will say that I hope everyone has a relaxing and restorative summer vacation for those students and parents and our 10-month staff who are home. And I will leave it there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I just want to thank the board for giving the public an opportunity to weigh in on the schools named after Confederate soldiers. I think it's important that we have the discussion, and I think this board made the bold decision to give it an opportunity, and I appreciate it. It's not overlooked. I know it, for some it might have been easy, but for others who represent areas that don't want to see these names changed, it's not easy. And I have part of that in my district, so I recognize that, but I think it's the right thing to do, and I just really appreciate the hard work that this board and the staff, Dr. Green and her staff, has done an amazing job and continue to do that, and we keep you all in prayer. And nothing else? Vice Chair Anderson moves to adjourn, second by Member Joyce. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I didn't hear Hershey or Willie, but we'll say aye anyway. Meeting adjourned.